Adam Schefter at ESPN says there's 275,000 people.
Well, that was some party in downtown Detroit. 775,000 people shattering the NFL draft attendance record.
This is the future.
All grit.
Evolution. This is the future.
All grit.
Evolution.
All grit.
All right, we made it. I'm not sure what was going on there. Apologize. So welcome in, man. It's Rise and Grind Morning Show. It's Wednesday, so we're going to kick it off with a lot of good topics today, including building your best receiver. Now, I know a lot of you are going to have a certain feeling on this topic, and we're going to go everybody but Lions. We'll include Lions too, but it's going to be everybody in the league since 2010. I'm sure some of the guys are going to have some players that are a little bit older than that, some GOATs, as we like to call them. Corey wanted to throw some GOATs in this morning, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, good morning. Let's get it rolling. Let me get the guys in. Apologize about the late start. Gentlemen, good morning. We're in. We're live. We made it. We're here.
The goats are here.
The goats
We're
are here.
Goats are here.
I almost went bab. I'm like, yeah, that's sheep. That's not a goat. I don't even know what sound a goat makes.
We would have rolled with it, man. We would have been ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what a goat. What sound does a goat make?
I don't know. Goats just headbutt. That's all I know. They headbutt.
We could headbutt.
So anyway, I'm headbutting YouTube this morning because I don't know what's going on. It would not let me select a stream, but it is what it is. It
Is
seems
that a
like
new intro?
No, that's an old intro.
Very cool. I like it.
Yeah, so last year my theme was evolution, and so I made that intro just for the evolution of where I thought the team was going, and then you started to hear. I heard Dan and Brad throughout the season use the term evolution a few times. Not saying that they watched my, intro, but I found it enlightening that they kind of felt the same way that the team was evolving. This year, it's against all odds. That's my theme. I just have not rolled out the new intro yet. It's taken some time to build. So we got to get off and running because Corey's got to get off early today. So let's just get into it. No time for pleasantries today. Corey and Riley, we've got some good topics today with the receivers, building our best receiver, or at least who we think is the best receiver over the last 15, 20 years. You may have an older one in there than that, and that's okay. But I'd like to start with, Riley, your first topic of the day, which was enlighten us on what's going on with joint practices for the Detroit Lions here. What was announced yesterday?
Yes, sir. Joint practices. So Lions will be having joint practices with the Miami Dolphins. Now, Richard Silver from the Detroit News says, while speaking to reporters at the NFL's annual league meetings in April, Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell hinted at his team having 2 sets of joint practices this summer. We now know who one of those sets will be with. The Miami Dolphins recently announced that they'd be having joint practices with all 3 of their preseason opponents, including the Detroit Lions. The Dolphins, who will play the Lions in an exhibition matchup August 16th, are also scheduled to play the Bears on the 10th and the Jaguars on the 23rd. But how this pertains to the Lions, the Dolphins said, quote, "This is the best measure of grit, perhaps, in the entire NFL." So we know that Dan Campbell used to coach in Miami, has a relationship there. And so this will be great, man. I always love to see when they get a chance to play somebody in a different colored jersey. And kind of a compliment, I feel like, from Miami to say that the Lions are the best measure of grit, perhaps, in the entire NFL. So what are your guys' thoughts there on are the Lions the grittiest team in the NFL?
Short
think that's
answer?
a-
Short answer is
Yeah.
yes, but go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I think the first thing I think of is, could there be a bigger, like difference between two head coaches?
Mm.
Right?
or teams, right? Because I mean, the Dolphins are kind of at the, I don't know, bottom of the barrel for me.
Yeah. They're definitely two differing personalities, vibes, environments. I'm sure being in a meeting with McDaniels versus Coach Campbell is a different experience. That is for sure.
But you'd love to be in that room. Right?
I remember McDaniels walking into, I think it was the first press conference last year, and he had this weird Miami hair going on, I guess you could call it. Like he was trying to look like he was 18 again. I don't know. He looks like he's 18, but he's a young coach. But he was definitely trying to throw back, I guess, to a younger vibe, if you want to call it that. Definitely interesting as far as his approach on football. I think he's just a brainiac. You know what I mean? Like he's just a super smart, intelligent guy. I don't know. His personality is kind of different, but you're spot on there. Dan Campbell's like, I'll eat you for lunch. And, McDaniels is like, where's the sushi? I don't know. The guys are way different. Way different.
I think their teams reflect their personality a little bit. Plus, when you're down in Miami versus in Detroit, it's just a different environment.
It's just there.
How was it?
Look, Miami's always great, but I'm not, single and 30, so it's really not a place for me in my, you know what I mean? Like I've got friends over there, and I did try to reach out to a couple of miles down there to see, what they were up to, but I just didn't have enough time. I literally only had like a couple of hours to myself, so I slid over there for a hot second, but it's just not for me. Like I'm not a nighttime guy. I'm not going to be out to 2-3 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? It's just not. Yeah. It's not my vibe. So
yeah, not unless you could get to Chicago, and if Ben would have been willing to meet up with you. But as we know from yesterday, I guess he didn't.
Yeah, Ben hid.
He got to schedule it. Yeah, he hid
the clubs.
Yeah, Ben hid.
I think overall, as far as football goes, joint practices are probably fun for the guys. When you've done a long training camp, you've been going against your own dudes. It's nice to see somebody else in a different jersey, like you were saying, Riley, and get to hit somebody that's not your buddy and that you're not going to go back into the locker room and have to talk to. So
okay, so I've got the first big statement, I guess, for this matchup. How quickly do we have a fight? Now we know that Dan Campbell absolutely squashes the idea that you're allowed to do any of that. He doesn't want any of that stuff going on. And they've even gone as far to say, like, look, if you're instigating, if you're doing stuff that's not football related, you're just not going to practice. You're going to go home for the day. But I do feel like a skirmish is good. And as long as it's a skirmish and not an all-out brawl, I think that a skirmish is good. So do we have a skirmish day one?
I think so.
I think so, too.
I think last year with the Giants, it was like, all right, yep, no fighting. And then what did we see first day?
Oh, they went at it.
Yeah, they went at it. Yeah,
What
but
do
it's
you
in the weird, unusual way. It's like it's healthy as long as it's, like you said, it stays within reason. But yeah, you got to go out and get the juices flowing and compete. And so yeah, I'm excited to see. And I think these are going to be in Detroit because that preseason game will be played at Ford Field. So these scrimmages with Miami will be at Allen Park.
Mm-hmm. Corey, what do you think?
I think I know somebody who might be in the middle of it, and I might be related to it.
So you're saying that Ahmed's he's gonna get into one, huh?
I'm just telling you right now that man has no back down, and I'm sure he will annoy the crap out of all of his teammates. And so when it's time for him to let loose on another team, I'm sure he will annoy the crap out of them, and they don't have any rules not to fight back. So, and he's not backing down. So I'm just saying, I would not be surprised if I see my brother in the middle of a tussle or whatever you want to call it, skirmish. As long as it's not a battle, then we're good. But yeah, I think it's going to get fiery.
He seems like a guy that, and I don't know him, too well, but from everything I've seen from him, he seems like a guy that might put somebody on the ground and then help him right up.
after he keeps him down there for a second, probably
Right,
like,
right.
and talks a little bit of crap, maybe in Arabic, right? And then helps him up. No, he's
Man.
got that switch that flips. He's so respectful and humble and all that stuff off the field. And it looks like he's giving, prompted answers to the media. Like, wow, he couldn't have said anything more, fitting or appropriate. But when dude gets on the field, it's like a whole different animal. And yeah, it's not one that you want to be in a cage with. I promise you that.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely looking forward to it. Can't wait to see these joint practices happening in real time. So let's get into these receivers. I think I want to just get this out of the way because I don't want to run out of time today. Now I was thinking about doing a series. So the series that we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks is kind of building your best, right? Building the ultimate at all positions. So whether it's quarterback, defensive end, safety, tight end, offensive guard, defensive tackle, I mean, we're going to hit on all the positions. It's the off season. So we have to find, some unique material and some things to discuss. So I'm going to challenge the chat, to be ready and to make sure you do your homework and start putting some of these things together. We'll have defined topics to discover, or I'm sorry, attributes at least to discover about these guys and talk about. So let's talk about best receiver or ultimate receiver. Now I went from 2010 forward. Now I snuck a couple of goats in because they may have played their last season in 2012. So I snuck a couple in. I know there's one that I could never leave off my list, and so I'm just going to start it off with size, and that's Calvin Johnson. So when we discuss size, Calvin Johnson, obviously known as Megatron for a reason. I mean, he really stood out as the quintessential big-bodied X wide receiver that he reset. I think he totally reset the market on receivers. He kind of reset the position. And you've heard, some of the greats talk about it, that when Calvin Johnson blessed the field with his presence, like every team was then trying to figure out how they could find one, how they could get one. And so he was that new, X receiver size, 6'5", 239 pounds, runs a 4.3 40. I mean, his physicality just allowed him to dominate at the line of scrimmage. Press coverage, good luck. It was a common challenge for X receivers, that lined up on the line of scrimmage, to do what he did. There was no corner or safety that could body him in any way. His ability to box out defenders, leverage his size, it just made him, nearly unstoppable. There's a vision that I have of Calvin, and I don't remember which game, might have been the Bengals game, going into the end zone, just draped in three defenders and goes up and catches the ball. Like nobody else does that stuff. And he did. And he did it constantly. But whether it was a slant or a post route, you couldn't stop him on those. There's no way you could. The speed and then the physicality, there's no way you could even catch up with him once he got into his long speed. But it allowed him to take just about any play to the house if he wanted to. But unique blend of size, speed, rarity in the NFL. Still have yet to see one anywhere close. You could say DK Metcalf, but just not even close to the same type of player. So Hall of Famer, he could be in every single one of these categories, but he's in the size for me. Corey, who's your size in the NFL?
Surprise, surprise. It's Calvin Johnson. Of course it's Calvin Johnson. Like you're saying, he revolutionized the position. I just watched a Instagram video where they're saying that this dude made every offensive coordinator think that a goal line fade was a good call, right? And it was when you had Calvin Johnson, right? He went to Georgia Tech and wore 21. Like they didn't throw the ball and they threw the ball to him. He completely dominated the NFL when he was in it. A double team was still not enough for him. And so, yeah, I think his blend of being able to, his wingspan, his height, his leaping ability, like you put all those things together and you have a catch radius it's unguardable, like literally unguardable. You got to put two dudes there. And this was before, he was the generation before they started going with big DBs, right? Like big DBs kind of came right alongside of him and maybe a little bit after him with guys like Richard Sherman. but like that was the only way you were going to even have a chance to match up, and even then it was going to take at least two of them. So yeah, Calvin Johnson is far and away, the size guy. If you had to go someone else, maybe a guy like Julio, who had a big body, was able to stretch the field. He could make all the catches on the field, and had a great career. I wish Calvin would have been able to play a little bit longer. I think then he would be the guy that probably is measured up to all receivers moving forward. But I think he is for sure the size, prototype that anybody would love to have in their starting X receiver. So he's my guy too.
Riley, are we going three for three?
I think we have to, man. And it's tough because you could, like you said, you could put Calvin in any one of these spots, but the image I have of Calvin is lined up pre-snap, two guys from New Orleans, the two defensive backs, lined up to guard him. There were few receivers that commanded that much attention and respect. And Will, you talked about the touchdown against Cincinnati. I remember Stafford rolling out, pointing up at him, and doesn't matter that he has three guys on him. He just lobbed it up to him, knowing that, basically I just have to throw it in this huge 12-foot space and Calvin's going to be able to come down with it. His size just set him apart amongst everything else. But yeah, he just incredible receiver all around, right out of the box. That's exactly, if you built a wide receiver in a lab, that's what you would build, is Calvin Johnson.
So I've had the opportunity to stand next to Calvin on a couple of occasions, and you want to talk about just an imposing frame of a man. His shoulders, I swear, are just as wide as he is tall. Like, the dude is just massive. His hands, they're all crinkled up now. I mean, he's got broken, bent fingers from all those missiles that Matthew Stafford, excuse me. All right, let's get into long speed. Now, I know that this one is going to be hotly contested, especially within the chat. And you could definitely put a couple of people in this place, a couple of players in this place. I got to fix my ear. So for long speed, now I know that we said 2010 forward. So here's what I got. Long speed. I know we put 2010 forward, and this guy played his last snaps in 2012. He has competition in the league now in the realm of long speed, and he has. I mean, there's a few players that you could throw in here now, especially over the last couple of seasons. But Randy Moss, just an unparalleled athlete at his time in the league. His ability to stretch the field and make coverages like cover two risky. Just a legendary player. A guy that, could just go up and get it, but beating safeties to their landmarks, making deep routes viable, even, against defenses designed to prevent them. And I mean, every defense tried to do their best, putting 2-3 guys over Randy. And that's when that term, "you got mossed," got coined, because he was continually just beating everybody and anybody. Absolute game changer. Instilled fear in just about everybody that lined across from him. Allowing him to make plays that seemed impossible. I mean, that's what his length did. That's what his long speed did. Unique athleticism and speed really left a mark on the game. And then I think, again, it was kind of resetting that mark for what is a wide receiver in the league. And he kind of started, to reset the league again with that tall frame, the long speed, the long arms. He kind of had it all. One-of-a-kind talent. And again, when you get torched in the NFL or clowned by a receiver now, you got Moss segments. I mean, they will live in infamy. Always be the proof that you need of just how good this guy was. And Team Moss, man, this guy battling cancer, obviously in my heart, dude. So wishing you the best. But Randy Moss is my long speed. Corey, I'll go to you. Who do you have in this category?
So I didn't do long speed. I just did speed, but I can break that up into two dudes. And I think Randy Moss is a great guy for this. And I think you guys saw a lot of him, when he played on the Vikings. So he's probably in your nightmares still. I think for me, like long speed, Deshaun Jackson, right, was just that type of receiver, a game-breaking speed. We remember the punt return he had against, the Giants when they should have never punted it, and he took it back to the house to end the game. A guy that could break the game, at any time and take the top off of defense. But I think my overall speed guy has to be Tyreek Hill. I think when we see Tyreek coming into the league, he literally changed the way the receiver position was played. And when you gave him to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, there were times where it's like, how is he so open? And then you watch the replay and it's just he's faster than everybody. And when you're in the NFL and these are the most elite athletes in the world and he's that much faster, you know that there's just a different level to the guy. He's got track speed on a football field, and oftentimes we try and translate those things. We've seen receivers that have been track stars, John Ross and things like that, who have, you know, broken the records in the 40, but then didn't translate to the field. And I was questioning whether whether Tyreek Hill would be able to do that. I had my doubts being a little guy, but you know, is he going to be that type of receiver that could be a true number one? And we saw that when he was in his prime, and I think he's starting to decline a little bit now, but when he was with the Chiefs and in his prime, man, there was something to be said for his speed, and it was truly unguardable. So that's my guy, Tyreek Hill, for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit copy paste there again. Tyreek Hill was my guy. Next gen stats hit clock Tyreek Hill. His fastest speeds 23.24 miles per hour. And then Corey, like you said too, it's not just, you know, sprinting forward in one direction. Obviously, Tyreek is the total package, but you can't imagine somebody just, you know, you're going to send deep on a deep ball. It terrifies me to think of defending Tyreek Hill, especially to think, man, how did the Chiefs let him get out of town? But obviously they've done more than okay without him. But Tyreek Hill, I think, is your long speed and just overall speed for me.
So since you guys brought up Tyreek Hill, I did two sets of speed. I had long speed, and then I had the short area quickness or the burst. And that is where I put Tyreek Hill. And I want to make sure that I throw this, you know, out there for the Lions fans. It was really hard for me to keep Jamison Williams off this list, especially in the long speed. As we have learned about J-Mo, his long speed is better than his short speed, but his speed combined is insane. It was hard for me to keep him off this list, but I'm looking at the ultimate best ever receivers as well. J-Mo's just not there yet. So Tyreek Hill, I guess when it comes to speed, I mean, that's what you think of, right? Is the undisputed champion during his heyday of his prime, known as the Cheetah, right? For a reason. Remarkable speed, just unmatched in the NFL. Starting to get matched. I mean, there's some players now that have caught up to him, but the 2023 season, he recorded some of the fastest ball carrier plays. So stunning. I mean, just 22 miles an hour, taking the ball from behind center. And then a 64-yard reception against the New York Giants. Tyreek led the league with 9 receptions of 40-plus yards and was also the top receiver for 50-plus yard receptions in 2022. Ability to stretch the field, he has it. Create explosive plays, he does it. I think it makes him a perfect choice for the quick, quickness or the burst off the line. But it's that short area, right? It's going from point A to point B in a hurry where he's changing direction, planting that foot in the ground and making a move. There's none quicker than I've ever seen than Tyreek Hill. So we've covered speed. Now I want to get into route running. Now this is definitely going to be a hotly contested, I think. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll see if we're on the same wavelength here. But this one, again, is hard because there are I would say there's so few names in this category. I could have went with Stephon Diggs. I could have went with JJ, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase. I could have went with a few here. But I ended up settling on Devontae Adams. 6'1", 215 pounds, not the biggest receiver in the room. Physicality isn't what he was known for. It's his route running. I mean, second to none. Known for his ability to create separation. Really ran a diverse route, tree. Maybe he's a little bit out of his prime now, but I still think he's probably one of the best route runners in the game. Ability to create space and separation is exactly what you're trying to do within your route. If you run a clean route and you can run it to the best of your ability, you're going to create natural separation, and that's what he does. He is one of the best, I think, ever, all years. I mean, you can go back as many years as you want. I think he's one of the best ever to do it the way that he does it. Have you ever seen anyone do that hezzy release better I mean, that would be my question to the chat. Obviously, you, Corey, and Riley, is that hezzy release that he's done. And we've seen videos on this where it just plants corners on the back of their heels. And that's not the position you want to be in as a corner. You want to be on the tips of your toes, able to mirror match and stay in face. Now when he does this hezzy, man, it gets you off balance immediately. So he excels at separation, quick footwork, deceptive movements. He's my guy, my ideal choice for route running. Corey, we'll go to you now. Who do you have for route running?
Ooh, I got some guys that I don't think you might think of off the top of your head. And this was a couple dudes in there for me. So the first guy I got to give credit to, and I think this is a guy that might have like set the standard for releases and footwork and route running before Devontae got on the scene, and that was Chad Ocho Cinco, or Chad Johnson, right? I remember when I was in high school, I saw a video of him working and doing footwork drills, and my goodness, they were so fast. It's kind of like the second receiver for, I'm drawing a blank right now, for the Eagles. We saw his footwork in a video like a year ago, and man, it was
AJ Brown.
It just looked, no, AJ Brown. Who's the other guy? Why am I? Yeah, Devonta Smith. I want to say Devontae Adams because you said Adams, and then it's Smith. Yeah, his feet just looked like they were going faster than everybody else's, and that's what Chad Johnson brought when he first stepped onto the scene, was this type of so the only other time I saw a hezzy release was in that old Chad Johnson video. And then the next guy that I've seen sustain it over a long period of time has been Keenan Allen. And this is a guy that does not get a ton of respect, but his pro day 40 was a 4.7. Okay. And he always gets open. And you don't do that if you don't have great routes. And so I think his sustained success for years with the Chargers, and then obviously last year with the Bears, didn't have a ton of success, but there were a couple blow up games. And I think I've seen him do it, in training, just with a relationship I have with his quarterback receivers coach. I've seen him do it, year after year after year. So Keenan Allen, Chad Johnson, and then prime Antonio Brown also ran great routes and got open all the time. Just was seemingly always open. And so those are my my trifecta of route runners. Of course, Devontae Adams and his releases have really stuck around for a really long time and been something that we haven't seen for a while with his basketball background. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's Keenan Allen and Chad Johnson in the route running department.
Riley, you're up next, man. Who do you put in this box? And to shout out to the chat real quick. Yeah, it's hard to keep Marvin Harrison out of this list, but he was prior to 2010, like he was early 2000s. So that's why I didn't go that far back. But yeah, Harrison was fun to watch. But Riley, who do you have?
Yeah, so for me, it's now in 2021 when Stafford first went to LA. I went out to SoFi Stadium a couple times to watch the Rams play in person. Cooper Kupp for me, because I remember looking at this guy and thinking, like, what does he do so well? He's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest. This is a guy that, to me, his patience on every play, he would wait till the right time to make his cut, and everything was so precise, down to like an inch, down to a tenth of a yard. So everything that Cooper Kupp did was deliberate. It was very crisp. And it was like Stafford almost could have closed his eyes and knew exactly where Cooper Kupp was going to be. So watching Stafford throw to Calvin for all those years, having the total package, the build a wide receiver body in the lab versus Cooper Kupp, where it was just like they were mentally on the same exact page. Cooper Kupp was precise with everything he did. So for me, I would say Cooper Kupp.
You're plugged in today, right, Riley?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it keeps glitching out.
Am I glitching?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Cooper's definitely a guy you could put on this list. And I think to Corey's point, like, when you're not the biggest, fastest, strongest guy, to be able to create separation, you have to do some things well. And route running that is the pinnacle of being a receiver. I think that is probably one of the most important things. So I see some people talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown in the chat too. I mean, you couldn't really leave this guy off the list. He would, if we were to do a top 10 or even a top 5, there would be a bunch of names that we could throw in here that you would maybe look at and say, okay, he's not the fastest. He's definitely not the biggest. But why does Amon-Ra St. Brown always create separation? You know, why is he always getting open, especially underneath? And it is this route running. It is his ability to create that separation because he does run really good routes. And he does this like shoulder move. It kind of makes it look like he's going to go to the outside. And then when he plants and goes to the inside, again, corners just don't stick with it. They're biting and thinking, you know, he's going to fade to, you know, the corner side of the end zone, and he ends up running it in. And that's, again, it's the epitome of good route running and finding a way to make others believe in something that you're not going to do. So next guy up happens to be Amon-Ra St. Brown for me, and that is blocking. We know that receivers are typically not known for their blocking. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe, has kind of set this new standard in this area. Playing in Dan Campbell's zone blocking scheme. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown's strength, his determination, it makes him really an effective blocker, but I think it goes beyond that. His ability to contribute in the run game while also posting impressive receiving stats, I think it demonstrates his versatility and his importance in the offense, but this is the no block, no rock offense, right? We heard this a few years ago that you're not going to get the ball in this offense unless you're out there protecting and blocking for the rest of the guys on the team. And that could be a receiver too, right? Depending on what route you're running, making sure that receiver gets open. I can't tell you how many times we've seen multiple Lions make really good blocks, but Amon-Ra St. Brown has freed up J-Mo. He's freed up Montgomery. He's freed up Jameer. He's out there, I mean, just getting into it with anybody and everybody on the defense. This is a no-brainer for me. I think he's one of the best downfield blockers in the game. But maybe Corey has somebody different. I don't know.
I didn't think of a blocker until you just told me we're doing blocking, and the first guy that comes to my mind is popping up in the chat as well. That's Hines Ward, man.
Oh, yeah.
The dude was the grittiest receiver I've ever seen, and he didn't play for the Lions. My guy would just lay hat, and it was a different generation of football where you could, you know, clean a dude's clock on a blindside block and not feel bad about it, and they weren't going to flag you. So he took advantage of that a couple of times, and I'm sure there were some concussions on defensive players that he was getting back at. Yeah, Hines Ward was just laying the hat, and I think that's got to be my best blocker. I know he retired a couple years after 2010, so he fits the mold, and that's going to be who I go with.
Yeah, there's a couple of other good ones in there too. Steve Smith. I mean, that dude. I love watching Steve Smith stuff. Who was it? I can't even think of the player that. I don't know if it was Hines Ward that did it or not, but there was that play. It was a few years ago.
Juju.
They just cleans. Was it Von Miller?
Perfect.
Perfect. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And he broke the dude's head.
Yeah. I mean, so those are the types of plays that you would get out of a Hines Ward, right? And back then when things were a little bit, I guess you could do a little bit more, right? The flags weren't flying as often as they are now, and they're trying to protect guys over the middle of the field. But to have that role reversed, right, where the linebackers are cleaning, you know, the clocks of the receivers coming over the middle, and then that role's reversed where a wide receiver is trying to hunt down a linebacker, man, that's just fun football. But then the aftermath, maybe not always the greatest when these guys not moving on the ground. But Riley, who did you have?
Yeah,
who are you thinking?
It's so hard because you feel like you're forgetting somebody, right? But a name that came to mind for me, Larry Fitzgerald, very physical receiver, and he was the guy that would do the same thing. You know, I saw him play in person as well. It was that damn season opening game when Matt Patricia called a timeout when Stafford had it all under control, and they ended up blowing a huge lead. But you know, Fitzgerald in that game was coming up with all these clutch receptions. It was rookie Kyler Murray. But I just remember him on the plays when he wouldn't get the ball, he was every bit as involved. I remember Nick Bosa one time talking about, man, like Fitzgerald can really block. He's an extremely physical guy, and you just love a receiver like Fitzgerald that whether he was getting the ball or not, he was, you know, involved in the play and opening pass for the running back. So I would say Larry Fitzgerald for me.
I mean, Larry is he's another one of those guys. Like I'm surprised he's not even on my list. Well, he is. We'll just talk about him next. We'll just go to hands, right? Larry Fitzgerald. How could you not have him as the best hands probably ever, in my opinion, but often regarded as one of the best hands in NFL history. 17-year career, targeted 2,335 times. He caught 1,432 passes. Guess how many drops he had? Just 2,300 targets. How many drops do you think that a player should have over that type of a career? Riley, just take a guess. How many do you think?
It's single digits. It has to be.
No. Single digits a year, maybe, but over the lifetime of a 17-year career, I mean, if you're having 3-4 drops a year, that's probably okay. But over 17 years, you would think that'd be 30, 40. What do you think, Corey? If you were to look at that number, how many drops would you say is okay?
I know an average receiver, you would allow a couple drops a year, but Larry Fitzgerald was no average receiver. I think I know the stat you're gonna throw out there.
29.
29.
His whole career.
29 drops over 17 seasons. And that's 2,335 times he was targeted. And so out of 1,432 times that he actually caught the ball, he only missed 29 catches. That's it.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's astonishing.
He has more tackles than drops in his career. He had 37 career tackles and 29 drops over his whole career. That is saying something.
It is.
Yeah, for a receiver that played 17 seasons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he was clutch, right? Absolute clutch. I mean, when you needed a catch, when you needed a first down, you knew that he was the go-to receiver. Everybody knew on the field that the ball was going to Larry, and you still couldn't stop the guy. So his ability to secure the ball, even in traffic, I think it really set him apart. Hands are just a benchmark for what all wide receivers should be, or how good they should be is based on their hands. But, man, making him the easy choice in this category. Do you have a different one? I'd be interested to hear if we have it. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of guys out there that got great hands. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, you could throw him in this list. But who else would you challenge Larry with?
I think the only person you could potentially throw out there, and this is pre-2010, so forgive me, but it's his uncle, Chris Carter. He had some of the best hands in the game, and I know it's a little further back, and I know he's a Minnesota Viking, so you probably don't want to give him his flowers. But if you remember, Larry Fitzgerald got his start in the NFL as the ball boy for his uncle, Chris Carter, who was the receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, and they said all he did was catch touchdowns. That was kind of the line around Chris Carter. He made everything look easy, and I think, alongside Randy Moss, while Randy Moss was up and coming and getting all the fanfare, Chris Carter was just consistently doing his thing, catching balls and making it look easy. And that's why he's in the Hall of Fame. And that's probably where Larry got some of his skills and learned how to play the game. And so you got to give credit where credit is due. The only other guy that came up, and he's even before Chris Carter, was Steve Largent, a little unknown receiver out of Seattle who wore no gloves and caught everything. So I got to give respect to the smaller white guy who didn't use gloves and hack the system, but caught everything and made some amazing catches up there in Seattle. So credit where credit is due. But I think you can't go wrong with Larry for sure.
Yeah, you got to love Larry, man. I mean, just one of the more humble professional guys. I mean, just on off the field, just a great dude, man. I wish, right, that I love Riley's single digits there. Like that would be insane if a receiver did that over 17 years. But I love the, I guess giving the flowers to Larry. He was great. But man, single digits would have been even better. My last one is body control. So did you do body control, Corey?
I did not.
Okay. Well, let's roll with it. Let's see what you think here. So for me, body control, you could put quite a few people in this list or in this category, excuse me. And matter of fact, there's been a few names that have been popping up in, I just saw Mike Furry pop up. There's a few names. There's a few names that you could throw in here, and there's a few names that are in the chat here. But for me, body control was D-Hop. It was DeAndre Hopkins. Exceptional body control. Has become probably one of the most prolific pass catchers in the NFL. Widely known for his ability to stay in control at all times. Utilized training with yoga, the single leg stability drills, the overhead lunge technique. Just strengthening his core. I mean, those were very important things that he did to make his game better. And I think that it is also probably one of the bigger reasons why his acrobatic catches were so great. Now, if I were to go outside of 2010, Jerry Rice. I mean, you could put him hands, route running, body control. You could probably not blocking. He was selfish. You could put him just about anywhere. But I would say his body control was bar none one of the best prior to the 2010s. But D-Hop, for me, most recent receiver, I think, with the best body control. Corey, what do you think? Challenge it.
I think those are both, D-Hop, yeah, his ability to make spectacular catches, and especially because he didn't have a quarterback. And I think that's something people don't, give enough credit for. It's like you don't make spectacular catches when you have a great quarterback because the ball's in the right spot. You kind of have to have a guy who's inaccurate a little bit to give you the chance to make some of those catches. So Odell, his infamous catch was good, but I just don't think he had the staying power. And he didn't do it for long enough for me to think that he's one of those top guys. He was a little bit raw. So yeah, like guys with body control like D-Hop and of course Jerry Rice. I've got Jerry Rice in a couple other, categories that I came up with that maybe weren't, something that we talked about. I can introduce those in a little bit, but yeah, I think you can't go wrong with D-Hop. Dude was catching everything even when I was throwing him the ball, right? So Riley, what you got?
He gave you a good quarterback rating, Corey?
Yeah, he made me look good. Exactly, just chucking it up.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. No, I'd be remiss if I went this whole thing and I didn't mention Justin Jefferson. The last few years, some of the catches that he's made, I'm like, how did he hold on to that ball? One of them was against the Lions when Kirby came up and just lit him up, and he stood up and just started flexing. And it's, that's being able to take a hit. But I think you see the way that he's maintains his speed. He tricks cornerbacks. He's always fluid. Yeah, he's just always making impressive plays. So for me, I would say Justin Jefferson. We're giving a lot of love to Minnesota here in this.
I'm not giving any love. You guys are. I'm not giving no love to Minnesota. And look, it's okay. Like this channel is all about, being truth, right? Truthful, transparent, and honest about things. I'm not going to just put guys in boxes because they didn't play for the Lions. As you noticed, I only had one Lion on the list. Well, two. And I could have put Lions all over this list, but I don't think that would be accurate. And I love the chat putting out all these other names. I had to laugh at the Mike Fury because I assumed that Newsom was talking about the Mike Fury that played for the Rams and the Lions. Yeah, he was hot for a minute, but I just had a chuckle at that one. So my list is complete. My best wide receiver, if you had the size of Calvin Johnson, if you had the long speed of Randy Moss, if you had the hands of Larry Fitzgerald, if you had the short area quickness and burst of Tyreek Hill, if you had the route running of Devontae Adams, the blocking ability of Amon-Ra St. Brown, and the body control of DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know of a better receiver than that, but we've had some really good answers today. And Corey, you said you did a few more abilities or agilities or attributes.
Yeah, let's see if you guys can come up with some stuff maybe that you haven't had prepped and see how you do off the top of your head. So my first category was football IQ, right? So there's some intangible qualities that make a great receiver that have nothing to do with their physical characteristics, and football IQ is one of those things, right? Knowing where you need to be, when you need to be there, how to break down a defense is something that is super valuable. And so for me, I think two of the names we've already brought up for other categories, but for me, this was Larry Fitzgerald, right? The guy that you said had the best hands. You don't have a career that pushes almost 40 years old at the wide receiver position if you don't know how to break down a defense. And he was consistently doing it. And it's probably from his time on the sideline, watching the game and studying the game and perfecting his craft outside of the sidelines, right? Whether that's film study or whatever. And, maybe you guys have somebody else. I can think of another receiver that was brought up and his viral breakdown of a play to a reporter after a game, and maybe you'll mention it. That was, it's that type of mentality and IQ that really separates the greatest from the guys who can just get open. So yeah, Larry was my guy, and we'll see if you guys come up with anybody else and maybe the name I'm looking for.
Look, I don't think that there's anybody better than Steve Smith in this category. You could also put Amon-Ra St. Brown here. I think both of them are extremely intelligent. We know that St. Brown, speaks like 4 different languages. Probably one of the most well-studied NFL, football players outside of guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I think St. Brown could be here. But Steve Smith, this guy was a student of the game, and you could just tell by the way that he played that he was a step ahead. Like, he knew where to be, when to be there. In your to your point, how to break down a play after the fact, or how to even to break down a corner. Right? He would study the corner in game before the game, and then use it against him, find those deficiencies. And I think that's a rarity in the NFL. I think a lot of these guys invest a lot of time into themselves, but I think it's the guys that really study a lot of film and look for the deficiencies in the guys that they're going to have to go up against, not necessarily, what defense are they playing or, where are they at on the football field? It's no, what are they doing that I can take advantage of? Is there a hiccup in their back pedal? Are their hips a little bit tight? How can I expose that? And then if it's happening in game, you communicate it to your quarterback and you say, hey, look, this guy's back pedal, he's got a little bit of a hiccup in it. I know that I can burn him on a double move, and you can get me long on a double post move or something. That's a Steve Smith for me. Interesting to see what you got, Riley. Who would you think?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The word that comes to mind is cerebral, right? It's like what Kobe would do. It wasn't just the margin for gaining an edge is razor thin. And so just like you're talking about, if you can find one little thing that you can use to be, I think, Corey, if I'm not mistaken, when you're talking about the receiver breaking down the play after game, it was Cooper.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
right.
Cup,
He gave the reporter, like, he went a full on football lingo, and everyone just like, well, okay, then, as though, like everyone was supposed to understand exactly what you meant, when you're breaking it down. Lake Dash, River Dash, everything he's talking about there. And him and Stafford were joking about it after, like, dude, you expected everybody to understand exactly what you meant, talking about the X backer coming across the middle of the field and just, but yeah, I think it's Cooper Kupp for me as well. And I had to get him somewhere on that list. But I think if you're talking IQ, for me, it's Amon-Ra or it's Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, that viral clip of Cooper Kupp, it's funny because I heard him talking about it after the fact, and he basically said that he wanted to get off the field, and the reporter kept asking him questions, so he gave it to him in a way that they would not ask again. He's like, let me give you every detail that you could possibly want and that you won't understand, so you'll never bring this up again. But I think, yeah, Cooper is that other guy. So I have 2 more intangible qualities, and they kind of, go into each other. And again, these are names that you guys are mentioning. That competitiveness, the dog, Steve Smith. That's what I see, right? When you're talking about somebody who plays with a chip on his shoulder, well, he was probably 5'10". I don't know exactly how tall he was. But when you're playing the outside receiver at an undersized, height, you got to have that grit, that mentality that's like, man, I'm better than you, and I'm about to prove it every single play. Yeah, Steve Smith was one of those guys that, man, I took a little bit of his game and put it into myself and just said, like, I'm never going to back down to anybody. I don't care who you are. And that is exactly how he played every single snap. And I love hearing him break down, receivers coming out of the draft and stuff. And when he gives you the stamp of approval, then you're one of them, because he was. And yeah, he was one of those guys that you just wish you could have on every team, because he sets the mentality and the expectation for everybody on the squad. So anybody else comes to your mind for competitiveness? And then the last one I had, work ethic. It's something similar. And the name that comes for that is Jerry Rice. We know his off season, his workouts. He'd run the hill, he'd run in sand, he'd do everything possible, catch bricks, right, to catch balls, right? Those are things that he was doing before all these training programs and all the off the field stuff, became, new age and things. He was just getting after it down in Mississippi. And yeah, so work ethic, Jerry Rice, competitiveness, Steve Smith. Those were my last two categories. If you add everything we've talked about this morning and those intangibles, man, we could have a receiver that could not and would not be stopped. But you guys let me know.
No, absolutely. I think to go with work ethic, I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, before he kind of lost, I guess, his marbles, so to speak, was Antonio Brown. I mean, for years, he was always talked about of how important his off-field work ethic was, just as it was on-field. He wasn't a guy that, you know, he's kind of gotten this rap sheet now that he's just nutso and, you know, wasn't a good football player because of that. But you can't deny the things that he did. I want to say, what was it, 2015, 16, 17? I think he was in a race for the most yards in the season. Was it with Devontae Adams? But either way, I mean, he led the league, I think, in like catches or yards, or almost did in one of those years. And for several seasons, I think between 2013 and 2017 or 18, he was always at the top. You know, he was always working harder than everybody else. But even though he's got this bad rap sheet now, matter of fact, I think he was just arrested the other day, still one of the hardest working guys when he was in the league. And you can't deny that. I did find this Cooper Kupp answer, so I do want to play it. But Riley, who is your answer for the hardest working guy in the room?
Yeah, you get Steve Smith, former Utah Ute, 5'9", you know, like you said, Corey, all of 5'9", just, but he was, some of the crap he would talk to, just, it's like, dude, that's next level, getting under people's skin. And then I think too, you can't go this whole segment without mentioning the guy that just won the Triple Crown, Jamar Chase, this last year. You know, you don't do that without an extremely, you know, a hard work ethic, especially with Cincinnati battling for the playoffs. Obviously they missed a hell of a season for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to have and not make the playoffs. I'm sure they want to redeem themselves this upcoming year, but Jamar Chase, I would say, belongs up there. You don't win that award without putting in a ton of work.
There's one other guy we can't leave off the list too, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. For work ethic, I don't know if there's a guy right now in the league that works as hard as he does. He has been catching 202 footballs after every practice, and if there was no practice, it was every single day since he's played Pee Wee ball. And so how many years has that been? 18, 15? I mean, it's been many, many, many years that he's been catching 202 balls every single day. So Jerry Rice catching bricks or Amon-Ra St. Brown catching 202 every day. I don't think that there's two harder working men probably that have ever played, you know, the position at least. But there's a few other guys that have worked really, really hard. And all the guys have worked really, really hard. I mean, to get to where they are today, that's not an easy task. You know what I find interesting? Like I just pulled up the YouTube on my phone to kind of look and see what was going on. And it says there's only 12 people watching. And like, that's not even close.
Can't be.
It's like, it's weird. Like that it's so far off, because it's not. There's like, I don't know, 80, 90 people in right now. But let me bring Cooper Kupp in. I'll have to erase it later, but let me just bring this in and let's listen to it.
Touchdown specifically, your defender went and blitzed. What did you see there? How were you able to use that to your advantage?
Yeah, they just had a little 3-deep fire zone, brought the nickel off the edge, safety dropped down. It didn't look like they were doing a replacement fire zone, so I knew at the back away we were going to get three pushing through. I had an opportunity to kind of run in there if I could beat my guy, and just had to beat the safety to the end zone.
What? I wanted to see her face, but it didn't show it. That's hilarious. I mean, he pretty much winning. I mean, if you've ever heard some of these plays called in the huddle, I mean, that is some of the, I mean, that's just gold. That's NFL gold when you hear some of these plays, and it's like literally 3,000 words long to get one play off. It's nuts. To have to remember all that stuff, these guys, they all have to be somewhat smart, right? Or at least know where they need to be on every play. But yeah, good segment. Anything else you want to add to it? Or are we good?
Yeah, I'm about to drop out of here, but I got to drop a highlight tape in the chat. It's a underrated slot receiver. So I'll just put his highlight there. It's a YouTube link. You guys can watch that on your own time. It will be my last 30, because it's me. You guys can enjoy that on your own time after the show's over.
Oh no, we're bringing it in right now as soon as you leave.
Oh no. Okay, great. This was sophomore year. You might witness a couple concussions. See if you could pick those out. But yeah, there are times where you know you should have gotten out of bounds, and then you think about it later. But yeah, I was that was my heyday right there. Sophomore year in 2008, playing for Santa Ana College. And if we wouldn't have had my quarterback get injured halfway through the year, I swear I would have gone for like 80 receptions. But then, yeah, but it was bad. He busted his knee, and it was never the same. The offense was never the same. But yeah, it was I
haven't opened it. So is it your YouTube?
It's yeah, I think there's it's my YouTube, and it's like a 3-minute video of just some catches, some clips.
Yeah. Just make sure you don't hit me with copyright.
Quality.
Yeah, just don't hit me with copyright.
We'll
be all good.
Yeah, there was a little 3 deep fire zone right there.
All right.
Oh man. All right, guys. Well, thanks for having me on.
We'll catch you tomorrow.
You.
We'll see you.
Yeah, we'll see you guys.
Have a good day,
All right.
Corey. See ya. I got to bring this in. Hold on.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh,
I love it,
man. This is some bad video. Bad quality video. From way back in the day.
Yeah, that's it was a long time ago, man. That's Corey must just be a few years older than me, but yeah, man, it was a different style. I mean, not necessarily style, but just a different. The game's evolved a lot, obviously, since that time. Because yeah, I remember my senior. To know ranked 1 in Utah, and then teams figured out all these guys do is run, and then we got stopped.
I got to bring your camera in because it's not in.
That's so cool though, man. With Corey's story to the Corey story, you know, to have a passion for football and then happen to have a brother that you know, ends up making it all the way to the league is exciting. I'm excited to see Ahmed for the Lions, as I'm sure all of us are.
All right, let's bring in Corey's. Wow, I'm in the wrong screen. Let's bring in Corey's video here. Now I'm gonna have to apologize for the the graininess. That's like 480p. Like, can you imagine we used to watch that on TV back in the day? That's crazy. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
I don't even know where he is. Is he highlighted in this?
No, I don't
he's
think
got to be top or bottom. So, oh my gosh, you can't even see the football. Oh, that had to be a concussion right there. He got nailed at the bottom of the pile. There he is over the middle. Oh, that was another concussion.
Yeah, so there's the concussions he's referring to for sure.
Oh, nice catch. Look at those shoulder pads, man. I remember back in the day, the shoulder pads were so big.
Big old shoulder pads.
Yeah, you look like Mike Allstott running around. There you go. Nice catch. Nice catch. I like the knifing, man. Good knife. Catch and turn and run. We'll have to we'll have to give him a grade.
Yeah, I mean, we'll give him a full breakdown.
I like how he's going for the open field. Nice move. Good block.
Yeah, if we went with open field as one of those traits.
That was a concussion right there. Oh, that was head on head.
He's knifing through these guys, yeah.
It's got like a weird sound in my ears.
So they gave him some quick ones. They had him run some kind of intermediate routes too. Even sent him deep. So he was kind of catching it all over, not just the quick pass and then use your speed. And then I think he just made reference to his quarterback got hurt and changed the dynamic. But I think this is in California, right? That's where he's from.
I'm not sure where he played. I don't remember the name of the school. It's not a name that is easy to remember. Quarterback's got some wheels.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I've seen it with some of these local high schools. There's one in particular in Utah. It's actually where Zach Wilson played and Jackson Dart played. But their Twitter account now, I mean, they have like jersey reveals, like whole media teams where I'm like, my gosh, it's like literally the top high schools in Utah have media production, like a Oregon University kind of a thing. And, I remember Saturday mornings watching game film up on the projector. And I think at that time, even they still had like literal tapes.
I mean, that field can't be brown, right? Like, I mean, this looks like it's from 1950.
Yeah. So I'm going to add the trait ability to make a contested catch, and I'm going to put Corey Besh there. Either Corey Besh or A.J. Brown.
Oh, shuffle pass. Love it.
Corey says that was during a wildfire. That's why that's why that field was so brown. But
good work, Corey. Good work, man. Love it. Thanks for sharing that today. So, good work. I love the hands. I love the ability. Now we're just gonna have to give him a whole bunch of crap. We're gonna have to go in and grade the video. We're gonna have to put out the PFF grade.
Give him a Will Rock draft grade.
Yeah.
Mind you, on that note too, I was listening to the day one of the draft again, and I know probably everybody in here was watching, but man, it was 23, 24 of those picks. I think we ended up getting.
There we go. Santa Ana College you put in there. Santa Ana.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an easy one actually to remember. I thought it was something different, but maybe not. I was looking for his stuff before, but loved it, man. I love the ability there. I mean, definitely could play. He's got some speed. He was putting some guys on skates.
Yeah.
Let me get the rest of our topics open. So again, I'll ask the question to the chat. We've gone through some receivers today. The best of creating your ultimate or creating your best receiver. I'll run through my list one more time. The best receiver that I put together today, which again, I could put so many people, so many players in all of these categories, but I had to take the best of the best that, in my opinion, have done it. I didn't do like strength or toughness or precision, or some of the other categories, but hands, I went with Larry Fitzgerald. If you had the size of Calvin Johnson, if you had the long speed of Randy Moss, the short area quickness or burst of Tyreek Hill, the route running of Devontae Adams, the blocking of Amon-Ra St. Brown, the body control of DeAndre Hopkins, in my opinion, I think it's a pretty perfect wide receiver. To go a little bit further, if you were to go with football IQ, I think, again, Steve Smith or Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you go with, the preparation and, what was the other category that Corey threw in there?
There was the work ethic and the IQ.
Work ethic. Yeah. So work ethic, again, you could put Amon-Ra St. Brown in there for his, 202 balls a day. Again, it's trying to be, I guess a little bit open to having who's the best, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be all Lions football players. We'll do our Lions at some point. We're going to do our best to best Lion, creating our best Lion receiver to ever play the game. There's going to be some good ones in there. Like, I mean, I loved watching Herman Moore and Brett Perriman. But there's some other good ones that obviously have been on the field since. So we'll get into that in the upcoming days. But again, I'm challenging the chat, man. Put it in there. Don't be ashamed. Tell us who you think. And again, in the comments later, put your best receivers in the comments. We'd love to see it. So now we're going to be ranking the top 32 quarterbacks ahead of the 2025 NFL season. And this was supposed to be yesterday's topic, and that's why the thumbnail changed. But it was Jared Goff getting snubbed again. But then the more I thought about it, where he ended up, and we'll have to catch up with Corey on this tomorrow and what he feels, so we might run it back a little bit tomorrow. To me, Goff kind of ended up right where Corey was thinking of putting him. But this article by PFF just came out in the last few days. Here, let me get it open here so I can look and see when it was made. It was Yeah, just a couple of days ago, about a week ago, May 20th. And the question, is Mahomes slipping? Is Mahomes slipping, in where he belongs in the echelon of quarterbacks in today's NFL? Is Joe Burrow really a top quarterback? Yeah, he had a good season last year, but is he a really good quarterback? Is he just a stat king? You said the same thing about Matthew Stafford, just a stat king, but not winning anything. So these are all real questions we have to answer. How do you put these quarterbacks into tiers? And why is it that some quarterbacks are getting a little bit more love than others when those quarterbacks really haven't done much, right? They really haven't done much. So that is that is the next topic, and it'll probably take us 20, 30 minutes to get through this one. So we're going to just run through what PFF did, and then we're going to run back and regrade it. So for all of you in the comments and then in the chat right now, who is your tier 1 quarterbacks in today's league? It's kind of hard to include rookies in this. We'll see what PFF did for adding rookies, but I would not put any rookies in this list at all. That's just for me. But tier 1 would be elite, right? The elite of the elite, and Patrick Mahomes is at number 1. Joe Burrow is at number 2. Lamar Jackson at number 3. And Josh Allen at number 4. And that's it for tier 1. So right away, Riley, do you have a problem with any, of these 4 guys?
I do not. Nope. I think
Wow.
that's, I don't have a problem with it. And now, honestly, with Jalen Hurts having won a Super Bowl, you could also maybe put him in that tier 1, but I wouldn't put him above either of those top 4: Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, Josh Allen. I do think those are the top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Okay, so Hurts does, come in at tier 2 at the 5th quarterback. But here's what I'm going to say. This tier 1 is, in my opinion, way off.
Okay.
That's my opinion. It's not yours. It's my opinion. So they have Mahomes holding the top spot, but the margin, according to this individual that wrote this article, John Costco, Kosko, not Costco, like the store, says that the margin is slimmer for Patrick Mahomes to remain the number 1. His passing grade over the last 2 seasons sits at 86, a strong number, but a step below the elite level that we saw from 2018 to 2022. The supporting cast hasn't always helped, but particularly at receiver, it's fair to say that he's had some otherworldly play between 2018 and 2022, and that's starting to get further and further away into the rearview mirror of Mahomes' ability as the number 1 quarterback. So if you're going to put stats into this, which he did, and the otherworldly play of Patrick Mahomes, then why are you not including that with what you did in the top 4 here, is my question. So Joe Burrow, they put it number 2, saying that the only real knock on Joe Burrow is that he hasn't entered a season at full strength in years. But when he's right, there may be no one better. Burrow's 93.5 passing grade and 95.2 grade overall the past 3 seasons led all quarterbacks. Did he even play in 2023?
Yeah, there hasn't been a season where he missed the whole season, but I think 2023 was the one I remember him on the sideline. He couldn't even grip the ball, so his season was cut short.
So that's what I don't understand. So if he's saying that he's utilizing the last 3 seasons for his grade, his passing grade over the last 3 seasons is 95.2. Let me go back to 2023.
Yeah, I think it is.
So
2023.
So 24 he was in 17 games. In 23 he only played 10. And then in 22 and 21 he played in 16. And then in 2020 he played in 10. How can you use 2023 stats if he was only in 10 games? That's what I don't get, because if you would have played the rest of the season, who knows what you would have gone up against. And typically the last half of a schedule tends to be harder when you start to go up against all of your divisional opponents. This is the first year in a long time that we've seen a schedule put together the way that it is, where you're starting to get divisional opponents like right out the box. And I would throw a flag on this. I would not put Joe Burrow at number 2. Stay on the field and string some complete seasons together. For instance, Jared Goff. He hasn't missed a game since his first season with the Lions in 2021. He's played every single game, including playoffs. So his numbers, his stats are real. And then you also have to look at the supporting cast, right? They mentioned the supporting cast. Okay, so where is Jared Goff's supporting cast, ranked against every other quarterback in the league? You could say since 2023, with the addition of Jahmyr Gibbs, that things changed considerably because we didn't have a running game until then. And then you could also say that the addition of J-Mo didn't even start until maybe the last 2/3 of 2023. Right? He's got suspensions and other things. So when you look at the supporting cast for Jared Goff, he had Amon-Ra St. Brown and he had Sam Laporta in 2023, and that was really about it. And then the addition of Jahmyr Gibbs and, of course, David Montgomery. However, you look at the receiving core, he didn't have T. Higgins and he didn't have Jamar Chase. Right? He didn't have either one of those guys. And then who was his running back in 23?
For Joe Burrow?
Yeah, for Cincinnati.
It would have had to have been Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I think it was. So I think he had a really good supporting cast, right? Way better than what you could say the Lions had at the moment. Now in 2024, I think you could say that there's really hardly any teams out there that have a supporting cast that Jared Goff has. Now knowing what Jahmyr Gibbs is, knowing, who Jamison Williams can be any other, given day. We know what Amon-Ra St. Brown has been. And then he also has a really good offensive line. So again, if you're going to compare all of these things, I don't think that Joe Burrow belongs at number 2. Great season last year. Hell of a season last year. What is he going to do this year? Is he going to do the same this year? If he does, then okay, put him at number 2. But for me, he's not even in the top 5 because I want to see him string it together for more than one season. If you're going to put guys in a top 5 in the elite, you have to look at the guys that have been doing it year in and year out. And for me, Josh Allen would be number 2.
Okay.
He would not be number 4. Lamar Jackson. He's stayed fairly healthy. Now he's coming off one of his best seasons of his career, one of the highest graded quarterback campaigns in PFF history. So for what he did last year and what he strung together over the last few seasons, his postseason career is not great, right? But I think what he does in the regular season and what he does on the field for his team, I think that he's deserved of number 3 or 4. I would put him at number 4. So I would put Patrick Mahomes at number 1 because there hasn't been a better quarterback with how he's won football games. Now, again, I'm not going to say the refs are helping him a whole lot. We're just going to go off pure, ability. Patrick Mahomes has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for several seasons. Until you really unseat him, he's only missed 1 Super Bowl over the last few seasons, so as far as winning it, but he's been in 3 straight. So he is number 1, undoubtedly. I think that Josh Allen, his postseason career, not been the best. But I do believe it's no different than Lamar Jackson, and I think that his career has been better than Lamar Jackson's. So I would put him at number 2. Joe Burrow at number 2, you're at number 5 for me. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl. He's strung together multiple good seasons. How is he number 5 behind Josh Allen, behind Lamar Jackson, and behind Joe Burrow? Doesn't make a bit of sense to me. So for me, I'm putting Jalen Hurts at number 3. So Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and then Joe Burrow outside of the top 5. I guess you could put Lamar Jackson at number 4. But there is no way in the world I'm leaving Jared Goff out of the top 5. There's no way. That would be my top 5, and those would be considered elite, in my opinion. If you go to high-end starters, how would Jared Goff just be a high-end starter? In matter of fact, He's not even on this list until number 9, which they're calling solid starters who have flashed high-end play. You tell me another player in this league that has flashed with the kind of, stats that Jared Goff has had consistently since week 8 of 2022. Who's been better? Hardly anybody. So with that, now how would you put your list?
Yeah, so there is merit to what you're saying, and I guess you kind of answered my question, and not to jump right to this, but if you're Brad Holmes and the Bengals GM calls you, or the Ravens GM calls you, or would you trade Jared Goff for Joe Burrow 1-for-1 right now?
No, because I know what Jared Goff can do in this offense.
Okay, and
right?
Would you trade him for Lamar?
Now, Lamar Jackson had an opportunity to get traded.
Mm-hmm.
Lions didn't trade for him. And Brad has shown the ability to pull off big trades. He wasn't afraid. So if he thought that Lamar Jackson was better than Jared Goff, or that Lamar Jackson was better for the offense that they've built, I think that you have to look at this from a different perspective. Maybe not you personally, but I think all of us need to look at it from the perspective of who's right for your team, who's right for your offense, who's right for the weapons that you've developed for that quarterback. I think all of those things play a factor. If you want to separate the football player like this list is doing for who's the best, who's the elite, then I think it's a little bit of a different question, process, if you will. So no, I again, to answer your question, no, I don't think that Brad Holmes would have, because he didn't.
Because he didn't.
Because
Right.
he didn't. So why? I mean, it's a non-argument for me. He had an opportunity. He had plenty of money to do it if he wanted to do it. He could have paid Lamar exactly what he's paying Jared Goff, and that deal would have been just fine for Lamar. But he didn't do it.
Right. And so that kind of even leads into my point as well, is I don't want to necessarily bump Goff ahead of Burrow for me, but I do agree what Jared Goff has done with the Lions since becoming the Lions quarterback is nothing short of remarkable. I mean, it really is. And his statistics have improved every season. So as a supporting cast has improved, so have his statistics. He has delivered. He's come through, and that's who Brad Holmes and Dad Campbell hitched their wagon to. But for me, I'm going to keep the same top 5 again. Redoing this with Hurts, I would put Hurts into tier 1 at this point, and I would say that Goff for me would be I would say Goff would go number 6.
Okay, so are you going to stretch? Would you say that? Okay, put your tiers in. Where does elite stop? Because tier 1 is elite, tier 2 is high end starter, and tier 3, 3A, is a solid starter who has flashed high end play, and that is where Jared Goff is, at the top of tier 3A on this list.
Goff to me is a high end starter. He's tier 2. I would say he's tier 2. He's better than a tier 3 for sure. But I say he's 6. To me, tier 1 ends after 5 with Jalen Hurts.
Why? Why is Goff a high end starter, but Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, elite? What's the difference?
I think Mahomes has won a Super Bowl and an MVP. Jackson's won an MVP. Josh Allen just won an MVP. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow took the team. He took Cincinnati to the Super Bowl his second year. I know Goff's been to the, almost. He's been to the Super Bowl and then almost there.
No. I mean, yeah, he's been to a Super Bowl and then almost another one with 2 different teams.
Right.
He went to a Super Bowl. I think you need to throw away his first year at the Rams. He was thrown in the last 7 games of a season with a crap roster and a head coach that didn't care. They gave up and just threw Goff into the Wolves, right? Or the Sharks. And he didn't win a game. But then the next year, you take your team to the Super Bowl? And you do that with a team that just getting put together? Yeah, he had a really good running back. They had Cooper Kupp, I believe, at that point. But it wasn't a roster that was completely loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that was what, was that 2018 or 2019?
I think it was even before that.
No.
Might have been 2018 because I think he was drafted 2017.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I think with Goff, it was just until he came to the Lions, it was always like, he was the product of what McVay was doing.
But what has McVay done since? I mean, yeah, they won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford, but that roster was completely loaded. And Goff never had that. They were building that roster as Goff was exiting. And they were not just one player away with Matthew Stafford. They brought in a few players that season to make it work. Of course, we've seen how building a roster works in Detroit, right? We started building this roster in 2021, and everybody is playing that you draft. And then that roster, within 2 seasons, is going to the NFC Championship game. So, or not 21, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is it might take a couple of seasons. So that roster was being, cultivated. And as Goff is leaving, that roster is actually now a winner.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just the 1-for-1 trade of Goff and Stafford that led the Rams to win the Super Bowl.
For sure.
Stafford had a big arm in that, right? But there was other players that were brought in. Von Miller was brought in that year. Odell Beckham was brought in that year. I think Jalen Ramsey was brought in like the year before.
Yeah, he was there. They acquired him.
So the point that I'm making is that they brought in all these players to allow that roster to be what it was. And Brad Holmes had a hand in those roster building years. Mm-hmm. And so then you go to a new team that doesn't have a roster at all. Had 0 weapons in 2021. None. Yeah, we drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he didn't start to do anything until the second half of that season. And then he just kind of slowly grew, and then the next year took off. So he didn't really have what any of these other teams have had, because the Lions haven't had what these other teams have had, which is continuity, sustainability, and ownership and head coaches and GMs that know what they're doing. The Lions have never had that until now. Well, until 21. So I guess where I'm saying is I cannot leave Jared Goff out of an elite category. It doesn't matter if he has ability to run. That doesn't matter. Like Joe Burrow is not, this super threat, with his feet at all. So it has nothing to do with that. Yeah, Josh Allen can run the football. Lamar Jackson can run the football. Jalen Hurts can run the football. Patrick Mahomes, not running the football a whole lot anymore. Can he still run? Yes. But that has nothing to do with it for me, because that's the only difference that I see right now between who's in the top, 3 or 4 versus who's not. Right? Matthew Stafford ahead of Jared Goff. Do you believe that that's okay?
Not anymore. No.
Not anymore. Does it matter that they won a Super Bowl? Because let's put it this way. Aaron Rodgers, he won a Super Bowl, 14 years ago?
Yeah.
Is he better than some of these guys if he was playing today? Because he won a Super Bowl.
No.
Is he better than some of these guys 5 years ago because he won a Super Bowl? Where would you put him on the list?
Probably 5 years ago, he was still probably, right up at the top, I would say, for sure. But now he's out. And yeah, winning a Super Bowl isn't just the crowning, achievement. It doesn't keep you locked in the top 5 spot on this list for long haul. I think when the trade was made, I think that there's a reason why the Rams gave up all of what they did to make that swap. I think at the time, Stafford had the edge. I think for me too, with Jared Goff, it's just, I want this one more season, get back to the playoffs, get to the Super Bowl. I know that's not asking for much, right? Just go win the Super Bowl. I don't know. I almost feel a little unjust keeping Goff off of the elite tier just at this point, because he's been remarkable. And honestly, the thing that you said the other day too, is during one of the shows we were talking about his stats. I think it was when we were doing it with Corey, and you pointed out 5 of his interceptions last year came in one game.
I'm sorry, what stats came in one game? What were you saying?
For Goff, last year he had 12 interceptions, but 5 of those came in just the one game, and the last game.
So you take that one game away, he's got 7 interceptions on the season.
That's incredible.
Right, versus 33 touchdowns I think he threw?
37.
Something like that. That's insane. I mean, even having 37-12 ratio is really good. Anything below 10 is, I mean, that's like the best in the league, on any given year. But it also depends on how many times you're throwing the football. Look how many times he threw the football, right? Look how many times these other guys are throwing the football. I think you have to take that into consideration. A quarterback is not meant to be judged or evaluated based on their feet and escapability. A quarterback in this league has always been, what can you do with your arm? How can you facilitate, an offense of scheme? How can you identify what the defense is doing? Are you great at identifying what the defense is about to do and then control the situation and make a play happen? Goff has always done more with less. He has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league to decipher a defense. His pre-snap evaluation of a defense and post-snap evaluation, probably some of the fastest I've ever seen. The way that he is able to deduce down what is happening to make a play and get that ball out. Is for as much as people want to, talk crap about his arm, which again, I've proven the fact that his arm speed is just as good as, the top 10 in the league. On any given, throw, he can make it. Yeah, he doesn't do these funky sidearm throws and maybe doesn't have the quick, twitch, snappy throw, but deep balls, he can do it. Just about any throw on the field, he can make it. And he can get the ball, obviously there in a hurry. It doesn't look as fast as what some of the other guys are throwing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be fast, right? It just needs to be on time. See, that's the thing that I think a lot of fans don't understand about the football coming out of a quarterback's arm is it doesn't have to be a million miles an hour. Matter of fact, receivers hate that. And oftentimes they're going to drop it because it's coming in too fast, too hot. It hurts to catch it. So if you just got the ball on time, Tom Brady didn't have a rocket arm. The ball was on time. Why was it on time? Because he was able to see what was happening before it was happening and get that ball out where it needed to be. Him and Tom Brady, I mean, very similar body styles, very similar body mechanics, right? Tall, lanky. But I mean, Goff is in my opinion, very underrated in that category. I think the term elite it just has some, I guess the definition to me, it's used too liberally, in my opinion. I think the term elite is misused. If we're going to say, who's elite, who's not, I think all these guys have elite tendencies and elite things that they do, but I'm going to look at what have these guys done with the roster that they have had. Who has had the most difficult time behind the line of scrimmage because of whether it's their offensive line going through multiple injuries. 2023, I think the Lions went through 12 different offensive line formations. That's a lot, right? That's a lot to have to navigate through. Injuries, or I mean, even looking at who's had multiple offensive coordinator changes. Right? I think you have to throw that in there too. And some of that's happened for some of these guys. But for Jared Goff alone, and I'm not trying to make this whole thing about Jared Goff, but right now I am. I think you have to look at what he's done with less. You can't count 24 as him doing more with less because he had one of the best offenses in the league. But that offense doesn't just do what it does without Jared Goff. Here's another question for everybody in the chat and the comments. So Riley, who could you put behind Frank Ragnow in this offense that can do exactly what Jared Goff did last year? What did they have? Over 7,000 yards of offense? Who could do it better and why? I guess that's a great question for all of us to answer. Who could do it better and why, or just as good?
That is a damn good question. And that really does put into perspective kind of, who are you going to trust to do a better job with this offense to drive this car than Jared Goff? Mahomes, you'd take Mahomes, I'm sure. Josh Allen for the running ability, I'm sure. But outside of that, would Lamar Jackson have led the team to more yards or more points? Surely he's not going to lead them to more wins. You won 15 of 17 games. And then even in the playoff game, that's the criticism, right? He folded in the playoff game. Jared Goff, how old is Goff? 30?
I think he's 28.
31?
I think he's 28. 28 or 29.
Yeah, he's 30.
Is he?
He turns 31 in October, but that's still, man. I mean, he still has 6-7 years at a very high level, I'm sure.
Yeah, he is 30. He was born in October.
Yeah. That's a great question, Will. I mean, it really is to think about. Honestly, just give yourself some truth serum. Who would you switch out at this? And especially at this point, now where you have a new offensive coordinator coming in, and we've been told, it's been reported that Goff has had authorship in working with Johnny Morton. Now he was working very closely with Ben. They tailored it to him. They literally brought him in from LA and said, we're going to put you in position to succeed. And they've done that. And each side has upheld their end of the bargain.
Okay, so there's a couple good things that you just mentioned in there. But first, I've got to welcome Carol Besh into the Lions Faithful.
There we go.
Appreciate you joining the Lions Faithful membership. So you don't have to join the Voxer app. It is for members only. So if you do want to participate in the chat, they're talking about stuff all day in that chat. It's a fun group to be a part of. So if you'd like to be part of the Voxer chat, obviously it comes with, and Trace can get you set up with that, or I'll put it out again today for members only, the Voxer ad, where you can add yourself to the chat, and it's a good time, but you don't have to feel, what's the word I'm looking for?
Obligated.
Obligated. You don't have to be, you're not obligated to do it, but if you'd like to, we'd love to have you. And I appreciate you joining, Ms. Besh. So thank you for being part of the Rockhound Detroit Lions Faithful. It's a great question, right? Who would you put behind this offensive line in place of Jared Goff right now? 2 points came out of that for me of what you were just saying. Number one, how can you do it right now, knowing how this offense has been built? And to that point, I would say, I think fans, my opinion here, I think fans in general, not just Lions fans, but fans in general say, well, you built that offense around so-and-so. You gave them the best offensive line. You gave them 2 really good running backs. You gave them 3 wide receivers. No. Doesn't always work that way. It just happened to be that way, right? Just because Brad Holmes drafted really well does not mean that made Jared Goff better. It made his job a little bit easier because now we have a running game where they're staying fairly healthy and they're putting up yards. We've got a great offensive line that's blocking for Jared Goff. He still took 30 some odd sacks last year. And that's not Jared Goff forcing the sacks. Yeah, he took a couple of sacks that he didn't need to take. But largely, I think Jared Goff's extremely smart with the football. I think that people get over analytical, over criticizing what he does, because what he does wrong is a microcosm of what he does right. And again, I think that every team wants to give their quarterback the best offensive line. Every team wants to give their running backs the best offensive line. Every team wants to give their quarterback the best wide receivers. Just like every team wants to give their defense the best D tackle, the best D end, the best safety, the best corner, you name it, right? That's the point of building a football team. You can't penalize a player, namely the quarterback, because your GM has done a really good job. Did anybody really think that Amon-Ra St. Brown was going to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL in as little as 2 or 3 seasons? No, nobody thought that. No, and if you did, you're lying. I'm sorry, because nobody thought that but Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I'm glad that he did, because that's the reason why he is who he is today. But it was Brad Holmes that saw this ability in this guy and brought him in. And it was Jared Goff that helped develop him into the player that he is today. Without Jared, does Amon-Ra St. Brown do what he does? Does he even have the same opportunity that he did? You have to remember, he was like the 3rd or 4th option, and then injuries happened, and then it's like Amon-Ra's time to shine. And it just so happened that they connected early, and then Amon-Ra just took off, but it was that relationship. So what if he would have ended up as a Bengal in the 5th round? behind, Chase and Higgins. Unless those guys go down, he probably would have never risen to the top of the depth chart. And he would have never probably become the player that he was. Unless you had a smart enough coach and a GM to say, look at the way this guy's practicing. You cannot keep him off the field. But you know how many times that happens? That really good football players get drafted or even go undrafted, and those football players could have been the best to ever bless the game, and we never see it.
Mm-hmm.
They just slide through the cracks of the NFL and wither away, and then it's what you hear from them and their grandkids' stories, the what if. The what was supposed to happen didn't. I never got my opportunity, but I could have been this. You hear it all the time from everybody, but I think that there's some truth to that with some players. Now we're way off target here, but
no, it's good. I think if you're looking at topic like what are some of the most important relationships on the Detroit Lions, Goff and St. Brown might be right up there with one of the most important relationships there, because you're right. Some guys can politics. Like if Amon-Ra had been drafted to a good Detroit Lions team, maybe he never becomes the player that he is for this team. And with the fact it was a combination of them not being a good team and him getting that opportunity. But I think what you're saying is a good point. All these other aspects of the roster, none of that devalues the player that Jared Goff is. Right.
No, I can't. I think that he's made players, again, like Amon-Ra St. Brown better. And there's going to be a lot of people out there in the comments later or in the chat that'll say, no way. But you have to go deeper, like I just did. Go a little bit deeper with it. If you tuck him behind Higgins and Chase or any other team that has multiple good wide receivers, how does he crack the depth chart? He got a really good opportunity with the Lions because we had some injuries, unfortunately, that propelled him to be one of the only options for Jared Goff in 2021 at the last half of the season. And the rise of Amon-Ra, the sun god, was happening. So I'm saying all this to say Jared Goff has done way more with way less. Today, that's not the case because he has really good, cast around him of football players. And I'm not going to devalue, to your point, I'm not going to devalue him because of that. Jared Goff has built this offense. The second point that you made and what you were talking about a few moments ago was, like building the offense around somebody. And so what I was trying to say is that's what every team should do, right? You don't want to just bring a player in and force them to be something they're not. That's where you see players wash out. And that's where you see quarterbacks have difficulty where they go to an offense that maybe doesn't fit their personality, doesn't fit what they do well on the football field, and they phase out. Happens all the time. But Brad and Dan were smart and said, we know what Jared Goff does well from my time with the Rams. We're going to build around that. And quite honestly, the offense that they have today, it's not uncommon. A timing offense is not uncommon in the NFL. The majority of what they do in these offenses is based on timing. You need to be on this spot at this time. And that's why creating separation and good route running and clean route running is so important on so many different levels. But being to this spot in 1.8 seconds, for look one, and being on this spot at 1.95 seconds for look number two, and being at this spot at 2.2 seconds for look number three. You see where I'm going with that? It's all timing. But then you have the option routes and, if plays break down, Goff knows where to look. If the play, he knows if it's broken down and he knows, okay, my outlet is out here. And he's going to throw the ball in that direction. Jared Goff is a top 5 quarterback in this league. Statistically, he's a top 5 quarterback in this league over the last 2.5 seasons. There's hardly anybody better. Matter of fact, I pulled up some of the stats. Go ahead.
You remember last year too. I remember we were doing that, watching the Bears game. You called it right away that they were faking the fumble at Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're saying all that too, you're talking about the 1.8 seconds, the precision. I remember last year so many times, and especially at Dallas when he had a flea flicker I think it was a reverse flea flicker to Laporta for a touchdown. All those little gadget trick plays that come down to very precise execution. Goff was on the money on all of them. There were so many times where it was like, oh, this looks like it's building into something. And almost all of those ended in either a huge, a touchdown or a huge play. I still feel like for me, I'm going to put Burrow ahead of Goff. I'm going to stand firm on that. But it's hard to say. Is Jared Goff a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? I think most non-Lions fans are going to say no. I think a lot of Lions fans would say yes, but I think that you're making a compelling argument.
Well, why do they say no? They say no because of what Sean McVay did and said about the guy when he left L.A.
Reputation. You're right on that.
That's exactly why. But you go look at his play on the field. Let's talk about Burrow for just a second. Okay, so he puts up 4,918 yards last year. How many rushing yards? Please look this up. How many rushing yards did the Bengals have last year? And then let's look and see how many rushing yards the Lions had. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Goff put up 4,629 yards last year. So just 290 less than Joe Burrow. So one game's worth. But I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that the Lions probably crushed what the Bengals did in the rush game.
You're right. 380 attempts for Cincinnati running the football last year.
How many yards?
1,574 yards.
Mm-hmm. And what did the Lions have? So 380 for what? 1,500 yards.
Yep, 380 for 1,500. Yep. The Lions, 534 for 2,500.
Yeah. So 1,000 more yards on the ground and 200 more attempts.
And Montgomery and Gibbs both had 10 plus touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
If you throw a 3-yard drag route or a stick route or something in the red zone, instead of just handing it to Montgomery, Goff's 37 touchdowns quickly become 48, 49.
Yeah, so Joe Burrow throws 43 TDs to Jared Goff's 37, but you have to look at the bigger picture here. The Lions ran the ball 200 more times. They put up 1,000 more yards on the ground. And how many TDs did the Bengals have on the ground versus the Lions? The Lions had over 20 TDs on the ground.
Cincinnati had 11.
11. How many did the Lions have?
Gibbs had 4 in one game. The Lions had 29.
29. How many did the Bengals have?
11.
11. So 3 times as many touchdowns on the ground. So just give Goff 6 or 7 more opportunities to throw that quick hitter into the end zone versus running the football.
And Detroit won 15 games.
And it's it's a totally different conversation. So the reason why Joe Burrow had the season that he did is because he had to put up the ball 120 more times than Jared Goff because they didn't run the ball 120 more times. Well, the Lions did it 200 more times than the Bengals. So when I look at stats and I look at quarterback play to quarterback play, I'm not just looking at quarterbacks. I'm looking at the whole picture. How much of their run game affected what Jared Goff did? The fact that Jared Goff put up 4,629 yards and we put up 29 TDs on the ground with 2,500 yards on the ground, that should tell you something. It should absolutely tell you something. Now, Jared Goff's quarterback rating was better than Joe Burrow's. His QBR was a little bit less. Jared Goff took 31 sacks to Joe Burrow's 48. Jared Goff threw 12 interceptions to Joe Burrow's 9. Again, 5 in one game, and Jared Goff comes back to win the game. There's not another quarterback that's done that in more than 30 years. The 37 to 43 TDs. Jared Goff had a longer touchdown than Joe Burrow, 82 yards to 70. Jared Goff averaged 272 yards a game with 200 yards a game average on the ground to Joe Burrow's 289 yards a game. So again, completion percentage, Jared Goff was higher by 2%. It's exactly why I'm not going to put Joe Burrow ahead of Jared Goff. Jared Goff has done way more than what Joe Burrow has done. And to be that consistent, to be that accurate, to be able to put up those kind of yards, game in and game out. Well, didn't we have the most points in the league last year in the regular season? Or second most?
I think it was second most, but most yards.
Yeah. Craziness, right?
Baltimore had more points, but yeah.
But this isn't the only season that Jared Goff has did. He did it last year too. He did it last year. So if I go back to look at the 2023 regular season, Jared Goff is the second overall again. Tua Tagovailoa led the league. Are you going to say that Tua Tagovailoa is better than Jared Goff?
Absolutely not.
Right. So because because Joe Burrow leads the league one season, we're going to say he's better than Jared? I can't do it. I can't do it. But again, Jared Goff last year put up 4,600 yards. Let's just round up to 30 TDs, 12 interceptions again. So he threw 7 more TDs in 2024 with the same amount of interceptions. That's a great stat. His QB rating went up like 15 points versus the year before. His average yards per game was 269 last year, and in 2024 was 272. Consistency. Just consistent at everything he does. He put up the ball 605 times in 2023, and he put up the ball 539 times in 2024. Jared Goff for the last 2.5 seasons has been a statistical leader, but he's not a stat patter. They're winning football games. Now, it's not his fault the way the season ended. It's not the way his fault the season ended the year before. That was the defense. Too many injuries last year. In the prior season in 23, he put up, 35 points against the 49ers, and then the game collapses in the second half because their defense was doing things that our offense couldn't figure out because Ben Johnson completely folded, and the defense couldn't stop a bloody nose.
Yeah, ball was bouncing off a defensive back's helmet. Yeah. I think a lot of this goes back to when the trade was made, and I didn't know you at the time, but I know that listening to your work a lot as I did, you were on board with Goff right off the bat, and you had to have been one of very few.
Mm-hmm. I was probably the only. At least in this space, I was probably one of the only guys talking football for the Lions that was a believer of Jared Goff. And I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but the quick reason why, Riley, was because I went and looked at stats.
Yep.
Now, stats paint a picture. And so what I wasn't worried about was a stat let off for the Lions, or what Matthew Stafford was doing. Go back and look at their stats. Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford in 2020 at the end of the season, almost identical across the board.
Right.
And I even said that, right at the beginning of what I started, when I started doing this. Go look at them now. I bet you they're probably pretty close.
I think they were like neck and neck through some point early last year, and I think Goff's now pulled ahead. Stafford's stats last year, I mean, he had a great year. He willed LA to a bunch of wins, but he didn't throw 37 touchdowns. Stafford had 41 touchdowns, 16 picks his first year in LA, and then everything since has been kind of what it was in Detroit: 25 touchdowns, 10 picks.
Yeah,
Goff is statistically, he's won more games, didn't win the Super Bowl, so give him that. But I think it does go back to that because, for me, it was I was so bummed out about that trade, and I felt like Goff was just damaged goods. I felt like he was a throw-in, but I think for people like you, for Brad Holmes, for Dan Campbell, it's been nothing but a verification of something you already knew, that Jared Goff is a very, very good quarterback. And if he can get it done in Detroit, man, Hall of Fame.
I'm just not one to believe in the hype. I wasn't one to believe in what, McVay was saying. I mean, let's just be real about it for a moment. Sean McVay was trying to save his career. He was about to get fired in LA. And he had to put the blame on somebody. Right? It happens all the time. unfortunately, it's a nasty business. And so when this coach is almost there, you know, in LA wants a winner, he's going to blame the quarterback. So he blames Jared Goff, you know, sends him to Detroit. Everyone's laughing because it's Detroit at that time. It's where players go to end their career. That's what the thought process was before they realized who Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes were about to be. Now, here's another good question.
I love this, man. I love it. This is good.
So let's say the Lions, who they are, the Lions of today, the Lions are who they are today, back in 2021, and that trade happens. What are they saying about Jared Goff now? So Jared Goff hasn't played with the Lions. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's still been Matthew Stafford. We've been kind of this, you know, up and down thing, but drafting the same people, the same players, having some similar successes. The Lions are, you know, the talk of the town, but it's time to move on from Matthew Stafford. And the trade happens. What are they saying about Jared Goff then? Let me know in the comments below, because I guarantee you it's not the same old. They're probably saying, hey, we got a winner in Detroit. Jared Goff's going to come and do it.
He's going to put you over the top.
Right. That's exactly what I think people would have been saying. It would have been a different storyline altogether. It's funny how narratives change over time, and how so many people are trying to, you know, whitewash what they said 4 years ago and get it off the internet and try to reshape what they said about Jared Goff back in 2020. Go look for, you know, hot takes about Jared Goff. If you didn't, you know, record them, save them, they're hard to find. But if you go back and listen to what a lot of people were saying about that trade and Jared Goff, I mean, it was a laughingstock for Jared Goff. Yep. And he was being made fun of, and the Lions even more so. Not today. All right, so let me give you my top 5 one more time, and then we'll move forward. Trace, really appreciate the $20 donation. Says, thanks for bringing us great content, Will. F Cancer, FTB, really appreciate you. As always, the leader of the mod crew.
On 3rd and 14, Jones has got it, setting up a screen, and it's blown up. Oh, my goodness. Amik Robertson just sent ETN back to Jacksonville. What a hit.
So I'm going to have to keep, you know, some things the same, you know, given the fact that Mahomes has won Super Bowls, he's been at the top of the league, he's going to stay number 1 for me. Josh Allen, like I've already said, even though he hasn't won a Super Bowl, Super Bowls are not the end-all, be-all for me when I'm trying to rank, you know, a quarterback. I think that what he does on the field is so much more different than Lamar Jackson. You know, they both can run the football, but I think what they do as quarterbacks is different. Lamar had a better year last year throwing the football, but so did Jalen Hurts. Like Jalen Hurts, they used to, you know, talk so much crap about him only being a player that could run the football. And then, you know, when he wins the Super Bowl and he says, this is what you wanted to see, because he threw the football, right, throughout the entire season. Yeah, he put up like 72 yards on the ground in the Super Bowl and had a really good, you know, showing, but it was him throwing the football that won that game. It's hard to keep Jalen Hurts out of a top 5. I think now he's starting to be, you know, that guy, but he's only been doing it for 2 seasons. And I think that Jared Goff, and I'm not even talking about his running ability, because again, I think that doesn't even matter to me. I don't care if you run 1,000 yards as a quarterback. If you can't win football games, you running the football doesn't matter. Doesn't help.
Right.
Passing the ball matters. You're able to get deeper downfield a lot quicker and do a lot more. It's highly improbable that you're going to run the football all day and score a bunch of TDs on the ground. Yep. Yeah. Maybe, you know, the 10-yard and in, sure. The tush push, sure. But how many times have these quarterbacks broken a Michael Vick play and took it to the house more than 50 yards out? How many times does it really happen?
It's not often.
Not often. I can't even tell you one, honestly, in the last 5 years that I remember.
Yeah.
Okay, point. So go ahead.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
you're
so
right.
Mahomes, Josh Allen, number 2. this is where it gets hard for me because Joe Burrow hasn't done enough to earn number 2 or number 3 or number 4, in my opinion. Lamar Jackson has had some really good seasons. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I want to see more. I want to see more of that Lamar Jackson from last year throwing the football more. I really do. And it's hard to keep Josh Allen anywhere but number 2 because he's able to do both so well. He can sit back there and gunsling it all day. And if he has to run, I mean, watch out. 230 pounds running downhill at you is not what you want to see. So change it up a little bit from what I was saying earlier. I'll put Jalen Hurts at number 3. I will put Lamar Jackson at number 4 for now, but I'm not leaving Jared Goff out of my top 5. I will put Joe Burrow right behind him. Jaden Daniels has not done enough, right? You could put him in the top 10, but he has not done enough. Matthew Stafford, great quarterback, won 1 Super Bowl, put up a ton of yards, ton of stats. But what does he do, from more with less? He had Calvin Johnson, he had Golden Tate, he had a few others. With the Rams, I think he's had some pretty loaded rosters. I think he's a really good developer of receivers. I think what he did with Puka Nacua is, just super impressive. I could probably put Matthew Stafford right behind Joe Burrow. I might even put him ahead of Joe Burrow. And then, again, Jaden Daniels, excellent first year. I got to see a second year. I'll leave you in my top 10, but I'm not putting you ahead of some of these other guys. Baker Mayfield's all the way down at 13. That's surprising, right?
Yeah.
That
was going to be one of the guys I brought up and asked you about.
Yeah, and we'll have to talk about that. You're off today, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess next for me Justin Herbert hasn't done enough either. Brock Purdy's done more than most of these guys. It's laughable when I look at this. So let me just tell you guys the list of PFF. So Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts at 5, Jaden Daniels at 6, Matthew Stafford at 7, Justin Herbert at 8. And that is tier 1, elite, and then tier 2 started with Jalen Hurts, high-end starter. Tier 3A, solid starters who have flashed high-end play. Starts with Jared Goff at number 9, Geno Smith at 10, Brock Purdy at 11. And then it goes solid starters, but they need more help. Jordan Love at 12, Baker Mayfield at 13, CJ Stroud at 14, Kyler Murray at 15, Trevor Lawrence at 16, Dak Prescott at 17, and Tua Tagovailoa at 18. And then it goes young players with a wide range of potential outcomes. Bo Nix at 19, Bryce Young at 20, J.J. McCarthy, doesn't even even played it down yet, at 21. Drake May at 22, Michael Penix at 23, Caleb Williams at 24, Cam Ward at 25. Again, hasn't played it down. Sam Darnold at 26, Russell Wilson at 27, Justin Fields at 28. And then it goes low-end starters and not long-term options. Okay, Joe Flacco at 29, I get it. Anthony Richardson at 30, Mason Rudolph at 31, Tyler Shuck at 32. It's a wild list that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there's some rearranging that needs to be done on it for sure.
Yeah, based on what this quarterback has done, I've got to put Brock Purdy behind Stafford right now. Have to. The guy's Mr. Irrelevant has been consistently going into the playoffs and doing damage. Right? Look what he did to the Lions in the NFC Championship game. That's crazy. I'll put Justin Herbert behind him.
Okay.
I like Justin.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Purdy's done it for a few years. You're right. He's done. He was kind of a little bit lesser last year. I remember that game in San Francisco. We also were watching that game, and they just had so many injuries, right? But now that he's, not being paid the whatever his, minimum was, obviously he's earned that money But yeah, I remember watching Purdy play and texting some friends and being like, dude, this guy's legit. And you just wonder, how the hell does this guy fall that far in the draft? Because he can play.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my top 10. Here's the shuffle. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, top 5, elite. I'll go Joe Burrow, number 6. We'll make that the elite category, but again, I don't really care about elite. Like, I think that term is misused. Matthew Stafford at 7, Brock Purdy at 8, Justin Herbert at 9, Baker Mayfield at 10. That's my top 10 quarterbacks in the league right now. And that's where I'm going to stop, because the rest of them, I can't tell you what these rookies are going to do. J.J. McCarthy hasn't stepped onto a field. Caleb Williams, I mean, he's down at 24. I would have him right now as a top 20, just based on who's on this list. Trevor Lawrence would probably be ahead of him at 19. Dak Prescott would probably be somewhere in that 13 to 15 range. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa can be electric, but I'm worried about him being able to stay on the field. He would probably be in that 15 to 20 range, or 15 to 18 range.
Where do you have Jordan Love?
Jordan Love, I would probably put 14-ish.
Okay.
14-ish. He's been doing enough over the last couple of seasons, but I think he's still young. I think that he still has a lot to prove. But does he have enough? I think he has enough now. I think he had enough last year as far as weapons, and definitely had a good defense to help him out at times. But anyway, that's your quarterback rankings. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. I'm going to drop this link in the chat. So this is the PFF link. Slice it up, dice it up, and you let us know in the comments later what you think about top 10. Is Jared Goff deserving of a top 5? Is he deserving of a top 10? Tell us where you put him. Am I crazy to think that he's better than Joe Burrow? It's a what have you done for me lately league, and I think that Jared Goff has been doing a lot to deserve where I just put him at top 5 in the league. Super Bowl right around the corner for this guy.
That is cemented. And it's funny, I see Cake Man in the chat. I saw it earlier. Cake Man said, Burrow has more movement than Goff, but
yeah,
whatever's been said since, he says, great points. Maybe Goff is better. And I think it gets back to that question. I still, everything we've said about Jared Goff is true. I still think Joe Burrow is a hell of a player. He's extremely talented. I still, stand firm on that. But I guess it gets back to the question too. If it were my choice right now, if I'm Brad Holmes and, hey, you can 1-for-1 Goff for Burrow, you wouldn't do it. So it's not it's a win-win situation, but I almost feel like, yeah, with Goff, you just could not have convinced me when that trade happened a few years ago that Goff would do what he has done. And he's only 30 and he's just got paid. I mean, Goff's got to be one of the most motivated players in the NFL with a chance to win. And nothing will be sweeter for Jared Goff than winning a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. What's funny is when I was talking about Matthew Stafford, I think it was last week, I saw someone put out an article that someone else said that the booing that, when I was talking about the booing of, Jared Goff going to LA or Ben Johnson, coming into Detroit. And I said that Ben Johnson was going to get it worse than Matthew Stafford. And someone went and wrote an article saying that somebody else said that. Kind of funny, right? No one has talked about that this entire time, but yet I say it. I mean, there's people listening. I know who they are now because they outed themselves, but yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious to me.
I remember
if good journalists will give credit where credit is due, right?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't see the article, but I do remember you saying that. And I was pretty sure when we started, I know I mentioned it to you and Corey before we hit record on everything, that Baker was going to be somebody that I thought would be in the top 10 too. And that was, so no surprise that you came around on that.
We'll roll into the Baker talk here because there was some information, or there was a Bleacher Report on Baker. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about what was being said here. It's probably be the last topic of the day.
Yeah, for sure. So Mike Evans went on with Kevin Hart, the podcast that he does there. He's talking to him about everything, Tom Brady, his career in Tampa. But Mike Evans was specifically asked by Kevin Hart about Baker Mayfield. Mike Evans said, quote, Huge impact. Huge. He's a big reason why I came back to Tampa. The energy he's brought to Tampa after Tom's retirement, that's a huge act to follow. And I think he's done an unbelievable job winning 2 division championships and making it to the postseason. Tampa is in great hands with Baker, and I'm sure he'll play much longer than I will. And I look forward to a great season with this year and competing for a Super Bowl. So that really got me thinking. We're talking about a number 1 overall draft pick. Goes to Cleveland. Seems like he's doing what Goff's done. You won a playoff game in Cleveland. Takes over. He's got, his brash personality, his controversial personality. Sam Darnold was supposed to be the number 1 pick that year, all the way up leading to it, and then the night before it was, no, they're leaning towards Baker. They take Baker Mayfield. I remember when he goes to Carolina, teammates with Darnold at one point, it's like, man, he fell off. You just don't see a path most cases where these guys will go from a number 1 pick to, third string, second string, fighting for their job back. I remember he goes to the Rams, leads them on a game-winning drive after being on the team for 48 hours, less than 48 hours. And then to see what Baker has done in Tampa. Last year, Baker had, I believe, 41 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, like just absolutely balling. And I remember week 2 is the game Hutch had 5 sacks. There was one play in the second half where Baker extended the play. I think he made Hutchinson. He missed, juked him, got in the end zone. And I just remember thinking, man, Baker's not going to let the Lions win this game. Baker had one of the most impressive performances to me of any opponent from any game. And granted, there was only a couple that the Lions lost. But that was the one game, obviously with the Buffalo game, but that was the game where I felt like the Lions could win this game. And they're right there. But Baker's just not going to let them have it today. So I guess it kind of circles back to, what are your overall thoughts on Baker? Kind of an interesting career arc and trajectory, but you got to tip your hat to the guy, man. He's resilient. Teammates love him. And pretty cool story that he's just been persistent and stuck with it. And he's playing some really good football. Might even make Tampa a contender in the NFC this year.
I mean, they've been contenders the last couple of seasons. Look, for me, when I think about Baker, I think of resiliency. I think of a football player that, a lot of teams gave up on, or at least, the Browns obviously gave up on, but he's a guy that puts in the work, and you can see how likable he is and coachable he is. A couple of the things that he has done, like where, he goes undercover to be, one of the super fans and like stuff like that. It's just like when you see the real side of Baker and who he really is, it's hard not to like the guy. But to your point about, his level of grit. I mean, he comes into Detroit in 2023, loses a playoff game, comes back the next year in 2024. What was that, week 2 last year?
Yeah, it was week 2.
And he got
the Lions beat him twice last year, or the year before. The Lions beat him twice the year before, too. They won in Tampa. He didn't play great.
Right.
And throws a pick in the playoff game. But, yeah, he just came back and
yeah, so it was third time's a charm for him. And it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a row. But you could see just the level of intensity that Baker had in that game. It was week 2 last year. So, again, what I see from Baker is a quarterback that is willing to put it all out on the field. And he is a really good football player. Like, his accuracy, I mean, everything about him is great, in my opinion. He could be a top 5 quarterback really soon. If he keeps playing the way that he's playing, I think that he has a real shot to get there. I'm glad to see that the resurgency of his career is back. I'm glad to see that the Bucs have been able to do what they've been able to do with him. He's one of the guys I just never wanted to see, ended up losing his career because it was mismanaged by previous teams. He's in a great situation. I think that he's done all of the right things as a quarterback and as how do you put it? As a leader, I guess, on this team for the Bucs to lead them to where they are. I mean, his connection with Mike Evans has been one of the best connections to watch in the game. And that just doesn't happen because Mike Evans is one of the best wide receivers. I mean, it takes 2 to tango in this league. We know that. You can be the best wide receiver in the league and be traded to a team and just not have good success because you don't have good chemistry. But Baker makes sure that he puts in the time to build the chemistry. And again, a lot of this stuff is what I've witnessed through a lot of things that I've watched, over the last couple of seasons. Different YouTube videos and that on Baker where you get to hear him speak and hear what others are saying about him. Sharp Football Analysis put out some good stuff. The Pewter Report puts out some good stuff on him. The Cannon Podcast, those guys that, we had on last year, just listening to the things that they say about Baker and how impressed they are with the way that he's turned around his career and the Bucs. A team that's only been removed from a Super Bowl back in, 2020?
I think 2020
with Tom Brady, and
right.
working their way to get back. Look, he deserves everything that he's gotten in that deal. Was it 23 that he got an extension?
Yeah, 3 years, 100 million, something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be hard not to pay him $50 million a year. Let's put it that way. He deserves all of it right now. Putting the Bucs in contention, I think that he's done an excellent job. Again, resurgency for him, the grit factor that he has. Just a really good dude, man. Fun to watch him win. Just can't win in Detroit.
Yeah.
Just can't win against us.
Yeah, and they play again this year, right? I think so.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yep. Hopefully he has one of those off games, because he just wouldn't let me enjoy that Sunday. Last year he was determined to win. So yeah, man, it's a blast. I could talk quarterbacks all day. It's you got your top 10, and then it's just rank them however you will from there.
Well, let's go one more. So
yeah.
You had some more information on an NFC North.
Yeah.
An NFC North foe here in Caleb Williams. So there's been some interesting things that have come out about Caleb. Was it a week or two ago that there was a report that surfaced that it was either he or his father or both that said they did not want Caleb to go to Chicago. Is any of that in this that you're about to talk about?
It's not. And it's interesting because that's kind of become I don't want to say a non-topic, but Caleb hasn't come out and addressed it at all, and I think it's because there's nothing to really say. He doesn't win, nothing to gain by him saying anything on it, but just kind of interesting. A lot of people are saying, he hasn't come out and said, no, it's not true. He's not doing that because it was true. He didn't want to go to Chicago. His dad didn't want to go to Chicago. We were going to, dive into it heavy. I know that was right before the tornado unfortunately came through Michigan, and so we weren't on the show that morning. But lots of Caleb Williams talk. Obviously, for the Lions fans in particular, it's one of these things where if this guy hits his ceiling, it's problematic for the Lions, obviously. However, now Ben Johnson's there, so Joseph Zucker from Bleacher Report put out an article saying the Chicago Bears are looking for Caleb Williams to improve on some of the finer nuances that come with being a starting quarterback in the NFL. According to Albert Breer reported that his, quote, body language and pre-snap procedure are areas of focus with the Bears for their franchise QB. On the former, while the coaches understood the beating he took, they showed him film to emphasize how he'd been slow to pull himself up off the ground. It was a long year. People got fired in season, and in adverse circumstances, the staff explained having a quarterback who was rolling with the punches would go a long way. On the latter, there was a smattering of small things, like on the first play of one game, he turned to his left thinking the motion was coming when it actually was coming from the right. That needs to be cleaned up. So it's just a lot of smaller things. I think we've talked about it a bunch. There's no doubt his talent is there. It's what's between the ears. How locked in is he? Because you look at his rookie statistics. Let me pull these back up. But for a rookie quarterback, his stats were fine. I mean, they were a little bit better than fine. He had 20 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. It wasn't like he was a turnover machine. But there was something that was left to be desired. Everybody could see it. He's got this undeniable talent. He'll roll out and make a play where he throws something that you're just like, oh my gosh, dude, that's as beautiful as it looks or as it can get. But is he leading the team? Are the guys wanting to win for him? Are they wanting to run through a wall for him? Is he actually leading? Do the guys really care about winning for him? So obviously they bring in Ben Johnson. He goes to a quarterback a good quarterback situation, right? Because of that trade they made with Carolina. Usually the number one pick's going to a dumpster fire. I don't think Chicago was that. They won 7 games the year before. Caleb was going to a situation where you should be happy about it. You have a chance to perform well, to win football games, to turn things around in Chicago. So gets down to the question. Now you bring in an offensive-minded head coach. You're putting him in position to succeed theoretically. So is this a huge, obviously it's a huge year, but is this like the most important year for a football player, year 2 for Caleb Williams? Because he can't regress. And more than statistical production, he's got to lead. He's got to be the positive beacon. He's got to be, the thing that rallies everybody in Chicago around him. Can he fulfill that role? I know that you're a little more skeptical of that, Will, but what are your thoughts on Caleb, his leadership or lack thereof?
Okay, so you said a couple of things at the very beginning that I remember speaking about, both in-game. I think we did the away game commentary where we did it live. And then also, at the end of the season, there's something that I pointed out that I noticed right away, and it is his body language. So Caleb Williams in the game against Detroit, he just looked deflated. When he got up off the ground, he looked like he just took, 6 hits at once, and like every inch of his body hurt. That's how he looked. And I don't know, I've never really seen that from a quarterback, that it almost looked like he just didn't want to be in the game.
Right.
And that is, again, body language is, and I think what these, this article is speaking to is, dude, you can't, if you want to lead your team, if you want your team to have faith in you and trust in you, but more so have belief that they can win a football game, well, they're going to look directly at the quarterback. And what do you look like on the field? Do you look like you're able to continue to go? Or do you look like you have, that fire within you, that you're not going to give up, that this game is still within grasp, that you can go out and still win? Because if you look deflated, you can forget about it. The rest of the team is just not going to, they're not going to be there, right? Mentally, it's gone. So I saw that. And when I noticed that he was acting that way, I couldn't tell if he was hurt or if he was faking it or if he just didn't care. And if I'm questioning that, what are the players thinking? Now, they're going to know him way better than we would. But then when you hear that article that drops this year, that Caleb Williams and his dad legit had a plan to exit the draft, quit football, and go play in the UFL, and then come back to the draft and get drafted the next year.
Yeah.
My goodness. That's
crazy.
That it's not only crazy, but it's to think that a player would be willing to give up first, round money, number 1 overall money, being the number 1 overall period, to then potentially have a chance to get drafted the next year. Who knows what would have happened? But if that would have gone through, I don't know that a team would have drafted him the next year, at least very high. It would have probably been a Shedeur Sanders situation.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, when I look back at, talking about Caleb Williams and then thinking about Shedeur Sanders at the same time, I'm like, the whole storyline that ensued or surrounded Caleb Williams was worse than anything Shedeur Sanders did. Why was Caleb drafted number 1 overall with all of that crap around him? And then Shedeur Sanders gets drafted in the 5th round? I'm not saying that Shedeur is better than Caleb Williams. I don't know yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being better. But with all that stuff that happened with Caleb, I just don't understand it. I don't understand what happened to Shedeur, but more importantly, talking about Caleb here, what a circus. And to your point, can you regress in year 2? Year 2 is supposed to be, your springboard season. Everything is calmed down. You don't have to worry about the draft and the combine and all that stuff. You can just focus on yourself and football. And yeah, it does have to be a bounce back season for Caleb. He did have a pretty decent rookie season statistically, but mentally he didn't. All right, mentally his errors on the field were widely known. And not only that, but now you're working within a new offensive scheme. So you have a new coordinator that usually doesn't work well in the first year. You know, a lot of the guys on the team can struggle. And maybe it's not Caleb Williams struggling. Maybe it's the rest of the team struggling to grasp what Ben is trying to do. Maybe Ben is going to try to install too much, too quick, as opposed to taking a slower approach like maybe he would have learned in Detroit. They tried to slow walk some of that stuff to not overload the guys. And when they did recognize that they overloaded the guys, they backed way off. Mm-hmm. We've read about that. I'm not making that up. We've read about that. We've heard what they've said. They've said it in press conferences. So the same thing, we could see in Chicago. Is Ben going to try and install too much too quickly? Is it going to make these guys' heads just blow up because there's just too much? And is that going to spill over onto the field? I could see that. But the question is, or the point is, can he regress in year 2? I think that he could and still be okay. As far as he'll still be the quarterback the next year. But I would say beyond that, beyond year 3, then the writing's either on the wall or you've gotten it together. I don't expect the Bears to win a lot of games this year. I think if they were to get, above 9 wins, I think that would be an incredible season for them. That's my faith in the Bears right now. I don't see it. I think Caleb Williams is a drama queen. I'm still questioning, though. I'll finish with this on Caleb. In that last game against Detroit, for 32, 33 seconds, whatever it was, that the ball doesn't get snapped. How does that happen? Right? And then you look back at the body language. And then it makes me think, was there conversations with Ben and Caleb behind the scenes that we don't know about? Was Caleb intentionally throwing that game to give Ben a chance at winning a Super Bowl? I'm just saying, because I've never seen a quarterback act like that on the field. And I definitely haven't seen a quarterback be that stupid to not hike the ball or call a timeout. If your coach isn't doing it, you got to do it. And then you just take the licking later from your coach when he says, why did you do that? I wasn't going to call a timeout there. You have to have the wherewithal to know at 19 seconds or 18 seconds, this is the last opportunity to really call a timeout and still have time to do something with the football, a couple more plays. Just stunk. That last, quarter or so really stunk. And it just didn't sit right with me after the way it ended. Something didn't seem right. And then Ben Johnson goes there. I don't know. Put on your tinfoil hat and think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember watching that too, because it was kind of anticlimactic. Like, they're rallying, and then all of a sudden it was just like, we don't really actually want to win this game, because it was inexplicable. It was malpractice. It was as crazy of a situation as I've seen. And it's so weird too to see one snap of the football, Caleb Williams do something incredible, jaw-dropping, and then something like that where you're like, how? Like a 10-year-old playing Madden would know to call a timeout there. It was just
exactly
interesting.
It just doesn't sit right with me. I mean, I'm glad that it ended, excuse me, the way that it did. It helped the Lions win another football game and it helped us secure the 1 seed. But I mean, I think that we knew the season was fairly all but over because the injuries was just too much. I mean, I think we still had a chance, but like I've always said on this channel, I'm not going to lie to you. I feel even if we would have beat the Commanders, we don't win the next week, especially after losing Amik. It was just too much. And it's not to say that I'm doubting the guys, because I'm not. I don't. I'm the biggest supporter of what we did last season. And I think that a lot of that is going to help what we're going to do this season. So anyway, to end the day, do you have any more on that, or are we good?
No, I think that's on it. I think you put a bow on it well.
So I guess, for this season, I've seen some different writings and some different thoughts. I guess for me, it's like this. To end today's show, my final 30 is this. If you think about what the Lions did last season, and they did it with, third, fourth, fifth string guys, you're on to your sixth, seventh, eighth defensive end. And now you brought back that same team. Think about how good this team can be. And this is something that I've been saying for a couple of months. And I know that there was just some recent articles that were written about the same kind of idea. But I've been saying this for months. That same team is now back on this roster currently. They still have to make the team. But we just went through the gauntlet of the NFL last year with third, fourth, fifth string guys, sixth, seventh, eighth defensive ends, and won 15 games. All of those guys now have great experience. And that team now trusts all of the guys behind them to know that if something happens, if they're not feeling well in the game, they don't have to stay out there and punish themselves. They can take a play off knowing the guy behind them can hold the fort down. See, I think a lot of these starters will stay in the game because they fear that if they leave the game and something happens and they're not in there, they're responsible because they're not in the game. Now I think that gives, all of these players a little bit of a cushion to say, I trust the guy coming in for me. I know how good he can play. I just watched what they did last year. And I think that that's going to give this team overall a little bit more opportunity to get a little bit of rest, a little bit more rotation. So imagine what we're going to do this year with a healthy team, with now a backup team that helped us win 15 games since week 6. It's crazy to think that we might now have the deepest roster in the NFL. We might. And it's going to get even deeper because of the draft picks that we picked up this year, the guys that we snagged in the offseason. This team is even deeper than it was. This might be the year. We'll see what happens in training camp. Last year when I left training camp, I knew we had the best defense I've ever seen. Since I've been a fan, I thought it was the best defense that we've seen in a long time, and I said how deep it was. This year might be even better. And that's a scary thought to have because I don't want to use the depth, right? If I was a coach, I wouldn't want to have to use it. I'm glad that it's there, but I would love to know that my guys are healthy and on the field each and every week because that's your best opportunity to win. But this could be the year, man. I think that the Lions have done a lot right. And so for all the people out there poo-pooing the team and, Brad Holmes and this, that, look, it gets tiring. It gets tiring to hear it and see it and read it. And that's why you're going to see a video come out later on today that just don't understand why, the writers of this area don't stick up for the team when they know what people are saying are false. Doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, Riley, your final 30 of the day.
Yeah, man, a great show. I'm excited for. I know one thing. I hope that this upcoming year is it for the Lions. But I can tell everybody in the chat, this is where you want to be for the journey. We're going to guide you guys all the way through the whole process. Appreciate you guys all being here with us. But Rocked On Detroit Lions, we're here to enhance Detroit Lion fandom. Appreciate, Will, everything that you do. Some strong thoughts. I'm going to spend the whole day thinking about Goff and Burrow now. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm excited and thankful as hell that Jared Goff is the quarterback of the Detroit Lions. But appreciate everybody hanging out today, and I'll be back tomorrow.
So I appreciate all you guys hanging out with Rocked On Detroit Lions. It's each and every day, man. We're trying to elevate what this team, how it's talked about, how it's thought about, the real, the raw, the authentic. It's right here. Probably the most connected community, to this fan base, to this team. The hosts and co-hosts on this channel, the ones that are here now, the ones that will be here in the future, our only goal is truth and transparency in everything that we do, and trying to make sure that we can have, conversations that can stretch the idea of normalcy. By being real and raw and authentic, you're going to get both sides. You're going to hear, the homerism, but at the same time, an opposite view is going to be the reality. And both of those are kind of hard to swallow. But when you combine it with sincere, fandom for a team and good research, I think that you're going to find a good blend of content. So thank you for being part of Rocked On Detroit Lions. If you haven't subscribed today or you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We'd love to have you along. We've gained, 15 or 20 today already, along with this show. And again, big shout out to Trace for your super chat this morning. Everything always goes a long way to help out Rocked On Cancer Foundation. We'll see you guys tomorrow. I think Riley's off tomorrow, but we'll see you guys back here tomorrow. In the morning, it'll be me and Corey, I think, tomorrow. I think Eric's still off for a while, but anyway, we'll see you guys back here tomorrow. You guys have a wonderful day. Riley, we'll talk to you later, man. We'll see you.
See you guys.
Adam Schefter at ESPN says there's 275,000 people.
Well, that was some party in downtown Detroit. 775,000 people shattering the NFL draft attendance record.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future. Evolution.